Hello there, friends. You are listening to episode 50 of That One Gaming Podcast.
Hooray!
Woo! We got to episode 50. Let's go. I am Colin, but I'm otherwise known as Delicious Morsels, and here with me today is Lucas, aka Carnival9. How you doing, Lucas?
Doing good.
All right. We've also got Neal, better known as VMK89. How's Neal doing today?
I'm doing great. I don't want to sound self-congratulatory, but we're at 50 episodes.
Hell yeah.
50 episodes and you haven't even watched one Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Fact.
Whatever.
Anyway.
We're more important.
If you are new to this podcast, welcome. Also, if you're not new to this podcast, you may notice we sound and look a little bit different because part of episode 50 is we just kind of redid everything. New graphics, new music. We're doing an overhaul. So, yeah, there's that. But anyway, if you are new here, welcome. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, or one of the many other podcasting platforms out there where the three of us get together every other week to talk about a variety of topics in the world of gaming. And today, as we have mentioned, we are celebrating our 50th episode by counting down 50 games that you should try before you die. Together with our listeners, we have compiled a list of games that we think are worth, at the very least, dipping your toes into, and who knows, maybe you'll find yourself a new favorite game along the way. So buckle up because this episode is gonna be one heck of a ride. But before we get into that, we always like to talk about what we've been playing since the last episode, and it's been a few weeks since the last episode not since the last episode went live, because we had the holiday mixed in there. So we've had an extra week to play games. So, Lucas, what have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing Sonic Advance, and would you believe it? I'm working on a fourth playthrough of Sonic Advance.
Sounds very advanced of you.
Yeah. It's, there's 4 characters to play as, so, 4 playthroughs. Especially because Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, and Amy all play very different.
Yes.
Interesting.
Especially Amy. Quite honestly, playing as Amy almost feels like playing as Hammer Kirby in a Sonic the Hedgehog environment.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like...
It's Hammer time.
I don't like that she doesn't have a spin dash.
She just has a little hop thing that she does that doesn't give you much speed at all.
Yeah. It's very reminiscent of a couple of Blaze Blue characters, honestly. It's like they don't have a straight run for their run. They just have a little forward hop.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Valkenhayn. But you know what? He transforms into a werewolf anyways, so he got 4-wheel drive. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Nice. What's Neal been playing?
Pretty much nothing.
Oh.
I kind of took a break from video games after doing tons of Metroid Prime. And then this past week has been kind of crazy for me in personal life, so I'm not gonna go into that. But I literally haven't played any games except for streams. So Minecraft, Super Mario 63. I will say in our Discord stream of Super Mario 63, Lucas was there. I beat Bowser.
Yeah.
Got 63 shine sprites and 63 star coins, and it was about 9:30, I want to say.
Yep.
And I had the final level unlocked, but it was I'm not playing this at 9:30 because
Understandable.
We fired up Smash Flash for a little bit.
Yeah.
That was
that game.
Something.
It was a lot less intricate than I remember, but maybe I'm remembering something else.
It wouldn't surprise me if there was more than one Super Smash Brothers Flash game kind of game.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
It's I definitely remember playing a Smash or Super Smash Brothers Flash game of some sort, but it wasn't that one. So
Oh, okay. Huh. No, I definitely recognize like because they had an OC Sonic character as one of those starting characters, and I definitely remember him.
yeah,
I know I did play this version, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's another
yeah.
one out there.
And then Fox was a Tails sprite at it.
Yeah, which is weird. I mean, Fox doesn't have any pixel art games, so I mean,
That's true.
but yeah, I mostly got wrecked in Smash Flash, which is normal for me in Smash. So
Yeah, and it's a Flash game, so it's not quite as
yeah,
well-rounded as a proper.
yeah. Samus was really good.
Yeah,
But Colin,
it's
what have you
interesting. They
been
used
playing?
the Fusion SAX Variasuit sprites for.
Yeah, they did
this
instead of Super
sprites.
Metroid sprites.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. I guess just to fit in with a lot of the sprites were 32-bit.
Yeah, but
But
then
yeah, Colin.
why
Sorry.
SNES Mega Man X and not Game Boy Advance Mega Man X then?
That's true.
They could have used Copy X from Mega Man Zero.
Mm.
Huh. Maybe just a wider variety of sprites from Mega Man X? I don't know.
Could be.
16-bit and 32-bit blend pretty decently.
Yeah, I mean they more or less wholesale copied the graphics from Mega Man 8 when they made Rockman and Forte. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Mario Advance games are just literally copied sprites
yeah, pretty much.
with less screen space. Yay!
Gotta love that screen crunch.
Okay, now Colin. Colin, what have you been playing?
For real.
Well, I finally finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like
Hey.
Nice.
2 weeks ago. It's really good.
Uh-huh.
It is a very good game. I had some difficulties with the final boss fight where I was like inches away from killing the final boss, and then my game glitched and
Oh no.
basically froze without freezing, if that makes sense. Like essentially what happened, I think what happened was like either I was in the middle of an animation or he was in the middle of an animation. Lethal damage was dealt to me, but because like there was some like being locked in the middle of an animation somewhere, when that animation ended, the game just kind of stalled and like
Oh.
and nothing was happening, and I had to like restart. And the options when you die during a multi-phase boss fight up until like literally 3 days ago were very confusing. Where the first 2 options that they give you out of 4 options could very well just mean the same exact thing. So I clicked on the second option, which ended up taking me all the way to the beginning of the final boss fight, which was like 6 phases and like a half an hour long.
What in the Kingdom Hearts?
And then I finally fought myself back to the final phase and kept dying over and over and over again. And it was just so incredibly frustrating. Finally, I beat it. And I was able to relax. I think it took me like 2 hours just from the beginning of my first attempt at the final boss to finally finishing it. It was like a 2-hour span. Kind of reminds me of my experience with Metroid Dread, just with more phases than Metroid Dread. It's really cool what they did with it, but man, having to restart that entire fight when you're all the way at the end of the fight, that really kind of took some wind out of the sails for me.
Understandable.
And additionally, like, because there's a bunch of side quests that I was trying to do, and for the most part, I was able to do pretty much every side quest in the game, except the ones that I wanted to do the most, which I got to the final like portion of those quests, and then they were level gated like 15 to 20 levels higher than my party at that point.
Rude.
It's like, I am at the end of the game. There is nowhere else for me to go but to the end of the game. Like, so how am I going to get 15 to 20 levels out of it unless I just grind for who knows how many hours it takes me to get 15 to 20 levels to continue on the side quest chain that I was otherwise really enjoying. But then that happened, and that took a little wind out of its sails for me. So that was disappointing because I wasn't able to see the end of that side quest chain that I was really enjoying. And then the final boss fight was being awful. But overall, as a complete package, it's a wonderful game. I can't wait for part 3. The devs have stated recently in interviews that all of the writing for the story of part 3 is done. And they're shooting for a 3-year development cycle, which means, barring any delays, which, considering Rebirth was developed throughout the pandemic and it still went pretty much smooth sailing even throughout all that, there's a very high potential part 3, which ends the remake saga, like ends the remake trilogy. There's a high potential it lands in the year of Final Fantasy VII's 30th anniversary in 2027, which would be amazing if they can nail that.
Yeah.
And I think they can, because the only reason that Rebirth took 4 years was because of the pandemic. And everything that they were building for Rebirth, now all of that's already, like the open world and everything, all of that's already there.
Yeah.
And they know it works for part 3. So they don't have to worry about any of that. So I think they're in a really good position to really hit that 3-year sweet spot for development. And I'm really excited for it.
Yeah.
But then after that, after I finished Rebirth, which, by the way, it took me 91 hours, I think, to finish it, I was like, I don't want to play another long game. I don't know if I said it on the podcast or if I just talked to you guys off the podcast about it or if I even mentioned it to you guys at all. But after Rebirth, I really wanted to play through some like smaller games.
Yeah, you did say that.
Yeah, I wanted to marathon some like smaller, like 8 to 10 hour experiences. And well,
So
I
how
started.
many Mega Man games did you play then?
Well, I booted up.
How many Metroid Primes did you play?
Yeah.
I booted up Castlevania 4.
Oh.
And played through
That's
about.
not the game I was expecting.
Yeah, I played through a little bit of the first level, and I was like, this is way too slow. After playing a fast-paced action game for 90 hours, I don't want to play this. So I didn't get very far in that.
Weird.
And then I went through like.
Honestly, those older classic Castlevanias are pretty slow as far as platforming goes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just like coming off of a fast-paced action game. It was too slow. Not a detriment to the game by any means. It was just
Super
wasn't.
Castlevania is still one of the best SNES games. So
yeah, it's just I wasn't in the mood for it at the time when I thought I would be. So then I tried like 3 other games in the span of an hour. I was like, none of these. I just don't feel like playing any of these. So then I was like, I'm gonna finally reinstall Final Fantasy XIV on my Steam Deck, because after I did the hard drive swap, obviously I had to reinstall the game because of that.
Right.
So I did that, and since then, I have finished Heavensward, finished the post-Heavensward patches, which are about 20 hours worth of content all on its own. And now I'm halfway through Stormblood.
Nice.
I think I've put like 70 hours or more into Final Fantasy XIV in the last 2.5 weeks. And I don't want to stop. I was like, I want to play a short game and then play another short game. And now here I am, freaking almost another 100 hours into this massive MMO.
Yeah. Like, MMOs are not short games.
Yeah. But, like, I flipped a different mindset when I picked it back up, where I wasn't expecting to finish. Like I finished Heaven's Word last week Sunday night, or no, Sunday morning. I finished Heaven's Word proper, and it was at that point it just kind of clicked with me. Is like if I treat each expansion as its own individual game that just takes place within the mechanics of Final Fantasy XIV, then it's a lot easier for my brain to kind of digest like the monumental task I have before me of playing through Heaven's Word, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker to get ready for Dawn Trail in July.
Honestly, that's a pretty good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So I am like full speed ahead on this now.
That sort of mentality is what got me through Phantasy Star Online with 12 characters.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am still the same character, but I have re-rolled my character twice since I picked it back up last year.
Yeah.
Which is nice. They give you the option of an item that you can purchase from the game shop that, I mean, you had to spend game shop as in spend real money on it, game shop. But you can buy an item that lets you just go through character creation again without having to actually make a second character. So you keep all of your progress and you just get to make a new character essentially and just continue from there. So
Nice.
I've done that a couple times since I picked it back up. But yeah, like Heaven's Word was a phenomenal story from start to finish. It's like your classic these two civilizations in ancient times, they're friends, and then one betrays the other, and the one that got betrayed is basically immortal because they're dragons. So they remember it, while the other civilization that did the betraying kind of buried it throughout generations with a false religion and stuff like that. And, and then the truth of it all comes out and the conflict ensues and stuff. It's kind of a classic tale like that. And it was the way they did it, wrote it, and executed on it was fantastic. And then leading into Stormblood now is we're kind of trying to start a war to reclaim this country that was taken by the Empire of Garlemald, which is like the big main antagonistic force in Final Fantasy XIV. And so now Stormblood is all about trying to build up your forces to kind of fight this war to reclaim this country. And it actually kind of turns into a war on two fronts because there is another country that the Empire is controlling that you're trying to liberate as well. And it's really cool. The locations that you go to are really cool. A lot of it is based on like traditional Japanese architecture and stuff like that. Because Stormblood was the expansion that introduced the samurai class. Stormblood, it's not as good as Heaven's Word, but it's pretty good. I really, really like the villains this time around. Like, they are absolutely terrifying, the amount of power this villain has. Like, at this point, I've already fought him twice, and he beats you down both times. Like, he's just this unstoppable force that you had to try and find this way to defeat him. And I love that about this so far. But yeah, I'm about halfway through Stormblood already. I started Stormblood like earlier this week.
Yeah.
But that really puts it into perspective for me too, because I thought it was going to be, I mean, it is a monumental task, but I thought it was going to be a monumental task to play through these 4 expansions and their post-game content before Dawn Trail comes out in July. But like at this pace I'm going at now,
yeah,
I could
that's
probably
not gonna be an issue.
yeah, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm loving it so far though. This story in this game is just so good. And now that I'm kind of a higher up level with my class and I have access to a whole bunch of fun gadgets and stuff to mess with, once I hit level 70, which I'm 2 levels away from now, I get a flamethrower.
What?
Yeah. Machinist gets a flamethrower. And I think
Nice.
somewhere between level 80 and 90, I get to summon a mech to come and fight for me for a few seconds.
Oh, you get to play Xenoblade.
Yeah. It's great. I love the Machinist. I just kind of hang back and vibe and do pew-pews and stuff. But yeah. Final Fantasy XIV is wonderful. I love this game so much.
I wish I had time for an MMO right now.
I wish you had time because, oh my God, I've got 5 other members of our Discord to pick it back up since I picked it up. Our Final Fantasy 14 channel is hopping.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. I love it. I love to see it.
Yeah.
There is talk of making That One Gaming Podcast official free company. I do have some stipulations that I would like to meet before I commit to that, though, just because I am in a free company already with a friend of the show that is the owner of that free company. So I don't want to just dip out of there.
Yeah.
But if we can get to a point where we have 8 people ready to sign up for this free company, then I would probably consider it at that point, because once you get 8 people, that's enough people to run a hard mode duty, hard mode dungeon, basically. So that would be, it's 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS, essentially. So if we can fill a hard mode duty, then I would be more open to forming a TOGP free company, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I would love to, but we will see. Come join us on the Discord with the link below, and you could be part of our Final Fantasy 14 club.
It's
really fun.
Pretty cool.
But here's the thing also, okay? All of this that I have played thus far, I'm still not at the edge of what they just give you for free in this game.
Wow.
Because the trial goes until the end of Stormblood. So they give you so much for free. It's absolutely maddening. It's crazy. I mean, the only unfortunate thing is free players can't join free companies, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah.
It's a little bit ironic. But
yeah, when it says free in the name.
Yeah. But it is what it is. I mean,
yeah.
For all intents and purposes, they really don't give you that many limits as a free player. I mean, there's no level there's no artificial level cap. Like level 70 is the cap for Stormblood, the expansion.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's good. But anyway, let's move on. We still have a lot of episode here, so let's
we sure do.
move on, because now it is time for our Hey Listeners segment.
Hey, listen!
So each episode, we ask our Discord members a prompt based on the topic of the episode for them to respond to. And if you, listening right now, would like to join in on the fun, there is a link to our Discord down below. Absolutely free to join, and we hope to see you there. Because this week's topic, obviously, is 50 games that you should try before you die. So our listeners got first dibs on the games in question. So we got 3 write-ins this week. Our first one comes from Crystal Lily, who writes, if I had to recommend one for people to try, that would be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I absolutely agree with that one. Lucas, why haven't you played Breath of the Wild yet?
I really don't know at this point.
You've owned it as long as you've owned your Switch, right?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much.
Unbelievable.
I think it was like the 3rd or 4th game we purchased for it. And I have done so much as take it out of the packaging and taste it.
I think we have all tasted a Breath of the Wild cartridge in our lifetime.
I taste every Switch cartridge. I have
Really?
a 2-year-old daughter. I gotta make sure they're still putting that bittering coating on there.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense.
Except I was doing this way before I had a 2-year-old, so...
Yeah, that's true. Oh, boy.
I just recreationally like bitter things, and I own 6 different coffee makers.
Nintendo Switch flavored coffee.
It probably wouldn't be the worst thing.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Our next write-in comes from BMan12HK, who writes, if I had to pick a game that everyone should at least try before they die, then it would be Nier Automata. The game has a lovely OST, A very interesting cast of characters, a good variety of scenery, and its story is just so gripping that it will have you hooked just from the opening section itself. Honestly, it's one of Yoko Taro's best entries into the Nier/Drakengard franchise and his best work in my honest opinion. I also absolutely agree with this one. Nier Automata is a fantastic game, and just the amount of different gameplay styles it crams into that game as well is great.
I love that you can do the Linux thing and uninstall your operating system and just die.
Yeah. It's got such a great sense of humor with that as well. Like
Yeah.
it's a great
Colin
game.
got me this game for Christmas the other year, and it's a very good game. Yeah, I definitely recommend it.
It also has many endings,
It
apparently.
does.
I've only played for one ending. But what's nice about it also is it is a shorter game. Like, I was actually surprised how short it was. It only took me about 10 hours to beat it the first time. I was like, wait, it's over? And I was like, guys, I beat this game. And then a couple other people in our Discord was like, but did you though? And I was like, what? Yeah, Nier Automata is a great example of a game that you should absolutely try before you die. Our last write-in comes from Jazzy, who writes, I've got to go with Stardew Valley on this one. Everyone deserves a nice, cozy game, and this has it all. Farming, foraging, fishing, mining, combat, and a fantastic crew of really diverse characters. And it was made entirely by one person to boot. Yeah. I haven't played Stardew yet, but that's...
Shout outs to indie games developed by a single person. It's got to be one of my favorite genres.
We may have more of those on this list. You'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah. I have a lot of nostalgia for the Harvest Moon type games because my sister, who surprisingly didn't write in for this, is a huge fan of the Harvest Moon games. I remember playing a lot of Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life, and Another Wonderful Life with her growing up, and Stardew Valley incorporating so much of that into its gameplay is really cool.
Yeah, Stardew has just kind of always intimidated me. I don't know why. It just looks like there's... I mean, here I am dumping like damn near 100 hours into an MMO over the past couple of weeks, being like, I'm intimidated by this cozy farming game. But yeah, maybe I'll have to give it a try before I die.
I mean,
I've played a little bit of it. I've never gotten super far into it. I think it's one of those games where it's like similar to Terraria, where it's got a lot of elements of Minecraft, and I get into that, and it's like, well, I'd rather just be playing Minecraft.
Understandable.
Apparently, they just released a pretty big update for it recently, and like the masses came flooding back into it. Like Steam player charts were going insane.
And the glitched any % run for Stardew Valley is under 9 minutes, so like you should just play it.
Oh,
quick game.
Oh, it's just a 9-minute game. Okay.
Yeah.
I got time for a 9-minute game.
Yeah.
Maybe I should play it.
You just have to learn hours of speedrun tech first. It's easy.
Oh boy. But thank you to our listeners for writing in. And also a reminder that if you, the listener that is listening to this right now, want to write into future Hey Listeners segments, then you can do so from the Discord link down below. Again, it's free to join. We got a lot of stuff going on in there, especially if you're a Final Fantasy 14 fan. So
yeah, it's a good
come
time.
hang out with
Final
us.
Fantasy 14 fan and a That
is.
One Gaming podcast fan.
It sure is. So without further ado, let's get into our list of games. We're 3 down so far. Got 47 more to go. Oh boy.
Yep.
Let's get into it. Lucas, what's your first game that you want to Tell people they should try before they die.
Super Mario All-Stars Plus World for the Super Nintendo. Specifically this version because it's 5 games instead of 4. It includes the original Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2, the Japanese version, also known as The Lost Levels, Super Mario Brothers 2 USA, which was Doki Doki Panic in Japan, Super Mario Brothers 3, and Super Mario World, all of which are legendary classic Nintendo platformers in their own right. We even did that one game episode on Super Mario World for Mario Month last year, and honestly, Super Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario Brothers 1 and 2 and also 2, but different. Fantastic platformer games that I think everyone should try.
2, but different.
It's true.
It is.
Like Shigeru Miyamoto kept insisting towards the Doki Doki Panic team, like, "Hey, can you make this more Mario-like?"
And we're like, fine, we'll just Mario it.
And then they did, and it ended up as being Super Mario Brothers 2 United States version.
I
Yeah,
mean,
all
you'll
5
get
of
no
the games on
opposition.
this
Yeah,
cartridge are fantastic games.
yeah, you'll get no opposition from me there. I mean, Super Mario World was the first game I ever owned, ever, and it is phenomenal. All of these games are phenomenal games. They're classic Mario. You can't go wrong with classic Mario.
Yeah.
Even the Lost Levels.
Like, there's some tweaks to the gameplay engines that, maybe like the more detailed players like your speedrunner crowd probably would pick out, but like, for all intents and purposes, this is just the classic games with a new coat of paint slapped on them, and they look fantastic, they play fantastic, and as far as Mario games go, that would be my go-to game cartridge for them.
All right. And what about... Whoa. Hold on. Okay. Neal, what do you got for your first game then?
Mine's a bit unusual. What?
Hold on. That was 47. Okay, this is game number 46. Hold on. Hold on.
We
So, 5. I can count. I promise. Okay.
Yep.
So, Neal, hit
You
us
better
with
leave
game.
that in.
Neal, hit us with game number 5.
I've got a mobile game, which is kind of a curveball. But Angry Birds Star Wars is, if you're going to play one mobile game until you die again, until you die, I'd recommend Angry Birds Star Wars. It is the most game mechanic rich of the Angry Birds. All the Angry Birds have many different Star Wars powers for all the different Star Wars characters. It was before they started leaning into microtransactions, and it was arguably the best one, in my opinion. So I highly recommend it. If you can't actually find it on app stores anymore. It's been taken down. But you can find it on the 3DS used, which is probably the best way to do it, just because, I went to a gaming store recently, and they had like 5 of them on sale for cheap.
Cheap thrills.
Cheap thrills.
love them.
So that's your mobile game for this episode. Moving on. Bouncing over to Colin. 6?
Game number 6. Should also mention that these are not in any particular order, but we are saving the best for last. So
Yes.
Stay tuned. But game number 6 is a game that you might have heard of. It's a critically acclaimed MMORPG by the name of Final Fantasy XIV with an expanded free trial that you can play all the way through the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heavensward expansion, and also the award-winning Stormblood expansion up to level 70 for free with no restrictions to playtime, and you should do that before you die. I rest my case.
It also runs on your Steam Deck, which is based on Linux. And I just like to interject for a moment, but you're referring to it as Linux, in fact, GNU/Linux, or as I've recently taken to calling it GNU plus Linux. I'm not going to do
not
this
an elevator
again.
pitch, Lucas. It's got to be shorter than this.
But anyway, I literally just kind of got done talking about just the breadth of the free trial alone in this game. How many hours that I've got out of it. I am mainlining it, by the way. This is not accounting for any of the thousands of side quests in this game. Like, I am just doing main story and my class quests, and I'm closing in on 200 hours. So, I mean, some people may think that's intimidating. To me personally, I say there is always something new there for me to experience whenever I have time for it. And for them to just give you so much content for absolutely free is incredible. And you should really try it out sometime, maybe before you die. Yeah. Anyway, Lucas, our 7th game.
All right. Game number 7 is probably also an off-the-wall take. It's 1941 Counterattack for the arcade. Yeah. It's entry in the classic Capcom 1940X shoot 'em up series. Probably my favorite, though. Never really got into 1942 or 1943, or actually I didn't really even know about 1940X until long after I'd played 1941 Counterattack, but it's very much a classic side-scroll, or like vertical shoot 'em up. Get variety, a couple of different weapons to choose from, and you can get like little subplanes that'll fly next to your plane to shoot down stuff, and yeah, it's just honestly one of my favorite shoot 'em ups of all time. It's right up there actually with Varth Operation Thunderstorm, another Capcom shooter, but I haven't beaten Varth yet because I keep getting stuck on stage 15. But yeah, if you like shoot 'em ups, I highly recommend 1941 Counterattack. If you can't find an arcade machine of it, it is one of the, I believe, 6 PC Engine Super Graphics games released. So like, good luck finding that as well. But really, any way that you could play it, I absolutely recommend it.
I'm surprised there wasn't like some other like random, more recent modern port of it to being like a classic arcade kind of title. But I guess maybe Capcom doesn't value their non-Street Fighter arcade games as much.
That seems to be the case. If it's not Resident Evil or Street Fighter, why would they put attention to it? Like Mega Man or Mega Man X or...
But Mega Man just got another crossover in Exoprimal, that game that unfortunately nobody plays.
Exoprimal, never heard of it. It's not Mega Man.
Okay, but real talk though, Exoprimal's not on this list, but it's actually kind of a fun game for how goofy and stupid and just kind of out of left field it is. But unfortunately, when I tried to play it last year, like the servers were just already dead. I could not find anybody to play with, and it's a multiplayer game. It's co-op. It's a co-op game. It's a co-op game, but it relies on multiple players.
Oh no!
To function. So yeah, I was really sad because I went through the tutorial and I was like, I actually kind of like this. This is kind of neat. And then sat there for half an hour waiting for people to queue up for a mission. And I was like, okay, this game's dead. This sucks.
Yeah, that really does suck.
Yeah. Anyway, on to our next game. Number 8 comes from Neal.
My next game is one you've definitely heard me talk about before. specifically 49 episodes ago. The Incredible Machine games.
Incredible.
These one, I've talked about these. They're Rube Goldberg machines that you can solve because certain parts are missing. You put in the right part and you can solve it. The level design in these is impeccable. There's multiple ways to solve most puzzles. These games are great. I highly recommend them. And you can buy all the Incredible Machine games in a mega pack on GOG for only $10.
That's good value.
Yeah, and it runs on 10 and 11, so
nice.
Yeah.
And because of the way that GOG does things, you can probably extract those executables and run them on your vintage hardware if you want.
Yeah, that's true too. I had Incredible Machine 2, and I'm pretty sure 2 and 3 are the ones with the CD music, which I still have copies on my iTunes of the songs that I ripped off my original copy of Incredible Machine.
Shoutouts to CD audio.
Yeah. But yeah, I highly recommend this one, and hey, you can buy it, unlike the last one, on modern hardware. So hey, wait, is 3DS modern hardware?
No.
What do you mean?
Anyway,
It's
buy
kind of in
Incredible
that.
Machine.
It's kind of in that awkward midway point between retro and modern.
The 3DS is modern hardware, like the
It came out in
Game Boy
2011.
SNES are retro hardware.
It's almost 15 years old.
Oh no.
And as of this past week, the online services are shut down, or are they? But anyway, not to derail.
Play Incredible
Let's see.
Machine.
Yeah.
Let me put one last shout out in here. The original creators, well after the game was out, would have been like 2010, I want to say, maybe later. The developers of the original game came out with Contraption Maker, which is the same game but built for HD screen space, and is on Steam and often goes on sale as well.
Cool.
Highly recommend that one as well. So
Great to hear there's a spiritual successor to the Incredible Machine.
yeah, and it's pretty good. It doesn't have the same great soundtrack, but it's still very good and very well made. Colin, your turn. What is game number
9?
9? Thank you. 9.
Game number 9 is Metal Gear Solid, the original Metal Gear Solid, from all the way back in 1998 on the PlayStation 1, starring Solid Snake. This is kind of a formative game for me also, because it's like I first played it way back when the PlayStation was still kind of in its infancy back in 98 when the game came out. And I was at my buddy's house and his older brother had a PlayStation and he had a copy of Metal Gear Solid for it. So we played it and we're like just kind of blown away by how incredibly cinematic the game was. And also just like the way enemies responded to the player and how intelligent.
What was that noise?
Yeah.
Whose footprints are these?
How intelligent, but at the same time dumb they were. Like, yeah, because like they would see your footprints in the snow and then they would follow those footprints and maybe they'll find you, or maybe you'll just run a couple circles around before they come around the corner and then they follow that path all the way around in circles 3 or 4 times before they continue onward, or they just lose interest.
Honestly, as primitive as the AI tracking felt, it actually added to the immersion to like how much of an expert at tactical espionage Solid Snake is.
Yeah, just it's an absolute classic game in the stealth genre. Absolutely a must play if you have an interest in checking out a stealth game of any sort. Like Metal Gear Solid is where really the genre kind of took off for a while, but in the late 90s and early to mid 2000s, like Metal Gear Solid, along with another franchise that will probably make an appearance later, kind of paved the way for stealth. They were referred to as stealth action games. And also Metal Gear Solid is just kind of owed just for so many games look back to Metal Gear Solid as something that really paved the way for cinematic presentation in video games. Like at the time Metal Gear Solid came out, there was nothing like it from a cinematic standpoint, much less a gameplay standpoint. So
yeah. And honestly, like as far as my own experience with Metal Gear Solid, like I snap purchased that game seeing it at a thrift store just because it's one of those games that has that sort of reputation to it. Like I saw it was there and it's like I need to own that game.
Yeah, and like also it's like the game may look kind of ugly by today's standards, but from a gameplay and mechanical standpoint and also just a storytelling standpoint, it holds up just absolutely. It could go toe to toe with any modern game from that standpoint. It holds up.
It's truly incredible.
Yeah. So Kojima may kind of be like an off the walls kind of crazy guy these days, but like
he hasn't been arrested for tax evasion yet.
That is true. Anyway, number 10 comes from Lucas.
Yeah, speaking of off the wall, it's time for something completely different with Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Puyo Puyo Tetris.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It is Puyo Puyo combined with Tetris. You might be more familiar with Puyo Puyo as either the classic Sega Genesis game Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or the classic SNES game Kirby's Avalanche, both of which are just reskins of Puyo Puyo. But it also incorporates Tetris, another all-time classic puzzle game. But Puyo Puyo Tetris, and well, as the name implies, combines the two of them. Play Puyo, like strictly Puyo Puyo modes, strictly Tetris modes. There's a swap mode which combines the two of them. In that on a time interval that you can set, I believe, like the minimum is 30 seconds to like a minute. Something like that, but it will switch from your Puyo Puyo screen to your Tetris screen, and it's for a very chaotic and very fun time. There's also fusion mode, which will drop both Tetris pieces and Puyo Puyo Puyos all at once onto the same screen. My personal favorite mode is Tetris because I like both games.
You can't go wrong with Tetris.
You really can't. Like I once marathoned for almost 2.5 hours getting to level 51 in Tetris. Which, in endless mode for Tetris, that's 510 lines at least. I think I game overed at 516.
Wow.
Yeah, I like Tetris. I like puzzle games, really. Especially Puyo Puyo and Tetris. So, you know.
So, Neal, our 11th game goes to you.
That would be Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Hell yeah.
Ever wanted to run a theme park? Once you get done playing this game, you probably won't on the money side, but boy, is it still a lot of fun.
It's one of my favorite Windows 98 games of all time.
You've probably heard of Roller Coaster Tycoon. I don't really need to say much more, but you can make your own roller coasters. You can put any number of various rides in. You can pick people up and put them in different locations. You can pick people up and kill them. You can set.
That's the
Yes.
most roller. You can put roller coasters together that have gaps in the track so that they explode, and when the carts
Make
go
them
flying
suffer.
off.
It's great.
It also is still a really good game as a management game, if you want to play it legit. There's tons of different maps, and it's spawned a whole thing.
Yeah.
Personally, I played the first game, and I played a little bit of 2. I wouldn't recommend much beyond that, other than potentially Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic, which brings back Chris Sawyer, who was the original developer of those. Lucas, you want to do a quick bit about Chris Sawyer and this game, program-wise?
Chris Sawyer is a madman. He programmed Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 by himself entirely in x86 assembly. I don't know if you've ever seen x86 assembly. You probably wouldn't outside of like computer science degree. It is an absolute nightmare to program in manually. This is why we have modern programming languages like C and C++, or even more modern stuff like C# and Rust. Why would you do that, Chris Sawyer? You are a madman. You have my absolute respect, though.
That's a good question, Mega Man.
So, great game, though. Loved playing
Absolutely
that.
great game.
Yeah.
You're still a
It's-
madman, but like this game is amazing.
I will say we all had to cut down our picks from higher numbers.
Turns out 50 isn't divisible by 3.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
very well.
So this was the one game that had a crossover, and it was with Lucas.
Yeah,
Fortunately, he cut that one, so I got it here. So
yeah. No,
double the
I
recommends for Roller Coaster Tycoon before you died. That's what I'm
really
trying to say.
triple because my sister is also a big fan of Roller Coaster Tycoon.
There we go.
She actually got me back into Roller Coaster Tycoon through a guy named Marcel Voss on YouTube. He does a bunch of really cool Roller Coaster Tycoon content. Often talks about the expansions of the game you can do through the community-made Open RCT2, which uses
Yeah.
it's like an open source re-implementation of Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. Also backwards compatible with the Roller Coaster Tycoon maps, and also functions with the game files for both the GOG Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2 games available on GOG. So,
And hey, have you played a Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic at all?
I have not.
Well, if you're interested, and to all our listeners, it is $5 on Steam as of right now.
$5.
Yeah.
That's a good deal. And Roller
Cheap
Coaster Tycoon
thrills.
Classic adds a lot of stuff that like the fans backported to Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 just through using the Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 engine, if I remember correctly. So that is
Yep.
absolutely a great deal. Go
And
buy
Chris
that.
Sawyer was involved with it.
Yep.
So yeah. Colin, what is your game number 12?
Number 12 on our list of 50 games is going to be Transformers Fall of Cybertron. This is the sequel to 2010's Transformers War for Cybertron, developed by High Moon Studios, published by Activision. Unfortunately, unpublished by Activision in modern times because they lost the Transformers license. So the only way you can buy it is to buy physical, like you should be anyway.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, Fall of Cybertron, the story takes place. It's a direct lead-in to the Generation 1 Transformers cartoon, where the Autobots have lost the fight for Cybertron. And now they're basically on a desperate mission to just find a way to evacuate Cybertron and to escape the Decepticons in this last-ditch effort. And it's just an epic story from start to finish. You get to play as so many different characters, and they all play differently because each level you play as a different character throughout the story's campaign. And I think it's like 12 levels. And at the very end, you actually get to choose if you pick, you choose if you want to side with the Autobots or the Decepticons by picking controlling Optimus or Megatron in the final fight, which is really cool. And then you get like slight variations on the ending because of that. But yeah, Fall of Cybertron was a phenomenal game. I wish the multiplayer was still live because the multiplayer was also extremely fun. You get to make your own transformer, complete with like different body parts and vehicle modes and all that stuff. Super fun game. I absolutely love it, and I wish we could play it on modern hardware.
Yeah.
Alas,
Everything
can't.
you've told me about the Cybertron games makes me wish that they were like available on modern platforms.
They're so good. The first game had 3-player co-op for its campaign. And that was really cool. I never actually got to play it co-op because I didn't have anybody to play it with. But that was an option that it had that was really cool. The sequel, they opted to forgo 3-player co-op and just co-op in general to like focus more on like character-driven storytelling and level design.
Yeah.
Which had its pluses and negatives. I mean, on the plus side, I mean, every level felt unique from the last one because every character had their own unique abilities and stuff that the level was designed to take account for. But at the same time, you lost that co-op element to it. So it's trade-offs. But I think Fall of Cybertron is definitely the better of the two games, especially if the multiplayer was still there.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, is the co-op available offline? Because like, there's definitely 3 of us here.
I think there is network-based co-op for War for Cybertron, if I recall correctly. Maybe. It's been a little while since I've checked on that. But yeah. So yeah, if you are in a retro game shop and you still have an Xbox 360 or a PS3 kicking around, give Fall of Cybertron a shot because it's definitely worth it. And I hope that now that Microsoft has Activision, that they at least make it backwards compatible on the Xbox Series.
That would be great.
It would be excellent. Hasbro said they want to do it, so I hope they do it. Anyway, game number 13 goes to Lucas.
Doom for
Doom!
MS. How do I put this? It's motherfucking Doom.
Yeah?
Yeah. It is the granddaddy of all first-person shooters, and it runs on a 66 megahertz 486, as well as like a billion other things, because the kind folks at id Software, in particular John Carmack, who's really big on this, decided to open source, or, well, it's not really open source, but release the source code for Doom, which allows all of these developers to do source ports of Doom and port it to everything from like TI-83 calculators to pregnancy tests. Like one of the first things that they ported it to even was Linux, so that's cool. Game is an all-time classic for like FPS games. Even if the engine is kind of simplistic compared to more modern games, it's like you can't aim up or down unless you're using, something like the Z Doom game engine. But even so, I still really enjoy it because it gives it kind of an arcadey feel, almost. Like you're not doing like your normal shooting, or like, well, you are shooting, but I don't know. It gives the game more of an emphasis on speed, which is really fun. Also, BFG 9000, always great.
Well, I mean, all that, and there's just the fact that Doom is the granddaddy of all shooting games.
Yep.
Like, first and third person, they all trace their roots back to what was first accomplished by the original Doom in 1993. So,
yeah.
It's something that you should at least give a try. Absolutely.
Yep.
Especially especially all them Fortnite kids with their Doom Slayers doing all them weird dances and stuff.
Yeah.
Give the original shooter a try. Just give it a try.
Yeah. I mean, like, there was Wolf 3D beforehand, but like Doom turned that formula up to 11, and that's why Wolf 3D is the granddaddy of the granddaddy of
the granddaddy's granddaddy, the grandest daddy.
I mean, lore-wise, BJ Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein 3D is the distant ancestor of Doom Guy, who is BJ Blazkowicz III, who's also a descendant of Commander Keen, the platforming series by id Software.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, Neal, you get number 14.
So continuing games that I played as a kid or growing up, in the case of Star Wars, we're going to talk about Pajama Sam 2, specifically. Thunder and Lightning aren't so frightening. Any of the original 3 games should be on your bucket list. Play at least one of them. Yeah. I particularly like this one. It's still got the original Pajama Sam voice actor. If I recall correctly, they changed it in 3.
Yeah. It was back when Pajama Sam was voiced by... We just quick search up Bobby Hill, because Pamela Adlon.
Pamela Adlon. Okay. Yep.
You might know her also from voicing Bobby Hill from King of the Hill.
But Dad!
Yes, that guy.
Basically the same voice, too.
Thank it, Bobby. Get in your goddamn pajamas.
These are all point-and-click adventures, and they do a really good job of having enough variation happen that your first few playthroughs as a kid are all going to be fairly different. And it's Pajama Sam.
Yeah.
Super kid-friendly. Definitely a good game for your kids that are old enough to play games, but not old enough to get into, I don't know, Doom.
Fortnite.
Yeah.
Fortnite. Yeah, Fortnite would be a good one. Yeah.
We definitely have a soft spot for the Pajama Sam games.
Yes.
It was a few years back. Becca and I actually picked up the entire Humongous Entertainment game library on Steam.
Humongous.
It's like 70 something games.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think somewhere we actually have a Becca's old Pajama Sam. There's no need to hide when it's dark outside disc. So
yeah, I like this game too, just because the concept, the basic plot is that suddenly there's terrible climate change going on over the entire world because Pajama Sam's tripped over a plug.
Oops.
Just got such a great opening incident.
Yeah. I love those old classic point and click adventure edutainment type games.
Yeah.
And Humongous made a lot of them too.
Yeah. Freddy the Fish. The Fox dude that's a detective.
Spy Fox.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Colin. 15.
All right. So for number 15, I will see Lucas's monumental shooter for his last pick and raise him one not quite as monumental, given that being the originator of the thing, but still very important. Halo 2. Notably, this game launched with the birth of Xbox Live and
happy birthday.
The introduction of online multiplayer way back in 2004, and Halo 2 brought some pretty significant improvements over the first game, which was pretty important in its own right for modernizing the first-person shooter for console in a way that no game had really done before.
Mm-hmm.
And Halo 2 brought along things like dual-wielding weapons, where a large variety of the weapons in the game could be equipped alongside of a second gun. And you could just run around with 2 pistols or 2 SMGs and just rain bullets on your enemies. Additionally, the campaign was one of the best first-person shooter campaigns out there, despite its cliffhanger ending. I mean, Halo 2's campaign introduced another hero alongside the Master Chief known as the Arbiter, which was a disgraced Covenant elite. So the interesting part about Halo 2's campaign was you were getting this split between Master Chief and the humans, and also getting to play as the Covenant. And that was something that going into that game, nobody expected to be the case. And it ended up being one of the best, like I said, one of the best first-person shooter campaigns out there. It's just so great, even to this day. And the anniversary edition that they did for the Master Chief Collection with the enhanced graphics and redone cutscenes and everything is just a phenomenal experience to play through.
I remember playing that at your house, like
Yeah.
after you got it for your Xbox One way back in the day.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, Halo 2, like even the multiplayer holds up. And the funny thing about Halo 2's multiplayer specifically is it was the reason that Microsoft had to delay shutting down the original Xbox Live service, because there was a group of players that would not log off of Halo 2 multiplayer for like over a week. They just sat there and played Halo 2 multiplayer for a week straight. And Microsoft was like, all right, as soon as you guys log off, though, we're done. And finally, everybody logged off and the original Microsoft Live service went down. But Halo 2 is just, it's such a legendary game.
That sounds like the equivalent of telling your kid that I'm going to put on a song and we're going to pick up the living room until the song is done and then putting on Tarkus.
Oh, man. Or if you're
someday.
if you really want to torture them, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence by Dream Theater.
Oh yeah, that's
it's a 43-minute song.
Yeah.
But
it's probably more kid friendly than like the other 40-minute songs I know. I mean,
probably.
Crimson 1 and 2 by Edge of Sanity are both fantastic albums, but they're also progressive death metal, and that's maybe not something kids are into.
Why not? But yeah, Halo 2, if you have not played it yet, go play it, especially if you have an Xbox and you haven't played Halo 2. I don't know who you are, that person that owns an Xbox and hasn't played Halo 2, but shame on you and fix that.
I mean,
but
it
game
was
number
decades ago when I bought my copy of Halo 2, but it was only like $15 from our favorite local game store. So I'm sure the prices of it haven't gone up too much.
I mean, especially if you own an Xbox Series, because it's on Game Pass.
Oh yeah, that too.
Play Halo 2. Anyway, our 16th game. Lucas, what do you got?
Well, it is definitely a top 5 contender for favorite Super Nintendo games, and also a favorite DS game with its expanded remake, Kirby Superstar, and I suppose also Ultra. Yeah, so this was my entry point to the Kirby series, and it is advertised as 8 games in one.
There's a few. You're really getting the value picks in with these multi-game cartridges for Super Nintendo.
Yeah, 8 games in one. Some of the games are a little bit of a throwaway experience because, like, Spring Breeze is sort of a like remake of Kirby's Dream Land 1 for the Game Boy, and Gourmet Race is like you're racing King DDD across 3 different levels to try and collect the most food, so it's more of a mid game if anything. But it's still like Dynablade and Great Cave Offensive and Revenge of Meta Knight and Milky Way Wishes, and then the dedicated boss rush mode of the arena are all fantastic games within Kirby Superstar. And me and my sister have played this game to death. Like, there isn't a time where we popped this into the SNES and we'd just play through it start to finish 100%. As a matter of fact, that was basically how we had to play it, because my copy of Kirby Superstar's save battery is dead because we got it used. We got it used from Blockbuster.
Nice.
And yeah, like the save battery not being the strongest doesn't bother us, because like every time just put it in the Super Nintendo, play through it 100% in one sitting in like a couple hours. Yeah, it's got a lot of variety to it as well. For obvious reasons. It's 8 games in one. But like each one of the games within Kirby Superstar brings like a very different approach to like just the Kirby gameplay formula, and it's a lot of fun. It's still my favorite Kirby game to this day, and there have been some really great Kirby games recently, so that's saying a lot.
Yeah. But Neal, our 17th game is yours. What's number 17?
Mario Kart Double Dash.
The worst Mario Kart.
Oh, wait.
No.
Didn't we correct
Don't
this
make-
opinion?
Don't make me get the tier list.
I had to.
Yeah.
I had to.
I specifically picked this one because for the
It's the most unique Mario Kart.
right.
For sure.
For the most part, like if you say, hey, play Mario Kart, it doesn't really matter what game you play as long as it's not the Mode 7 ones. They're all mostly Mario Kart Wii, Mario Kart 7, Mario Kart DS, Mario Kart 8. They all basically play the same, like with upgrades every time. But Double Dash is very unique, as Colin said, in that you've got 2 characters. Everybody gets special items, which I love. And there's a bunch of extra layers of strategy with the fact that you have 2 people in your cart with switching drivers and cart persons. It is very unique. It's the last one to have minimal levels compared to everything else, but it's definitely one. If you haven't played Double Dash, play it. At least get a feel for it. Yeah. And if you can play land mode, but that's kind of out there. But
yeah.
at least play with 4 people, 2v2. That is a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Land mode for Mario Kart Double Dash is kind of expensive.
Yeah. But you can do 2v2 on one screen. So as long as you've got 4 controllers,
Yeah.
I do recommend it. It's a ton of fun.
It's also got some of the best tracks in the series.
It does. Yep.
Yeah.
Daisy Cruiser is one of my favorites. The Bowser's
Yeah.
Castle is fantastic. The
Didn't
Rainbow
Babe-
Road has spawned a song.
Didn't Baby Park originate in Double Dash?
It sure did.
Well, there you go. See, you don't need anything else.
Yeah.
It had 7 laps in that version too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimate Pandemonium. So much fun.
Uh-huh.
Double Dash is the one Mario Kart game that I have on my Steam Deck. It's the only one I need on there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
still
a fun
can't believe I called the Mario Kart tier list.
Go watch that episode if you haven't. 14.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, you can listen to me reconcile with my past disdain for Double Dash because I used to not like it due to reasons. Anyway, we're not going to get into that.
Yep.
Number 18 is me. My next game, I've already talked about a stealth action game in this episode, but now I'm going to talk about the stealth action game, which is the third game in the Splinter Cell franchise. Bet you thought I was going to go Snake Eater there, but nope.
Sneater.
Sneaker! No, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, which released in 2005. It was the third game in the Splinter Cell series, and by far and away, my favorite stealth game ever made.
Yeah.
I have played through that game so many times, both the single player and the co-op mode. There's, I think, 5 co-op missions in the game that you can play with another person, split screen, and it splits the screen vertically instead of horizontally as well. So you have a taller screen to play on. And oh my god, it's such a fun game. I never did get to play the multiplayer, unfortunately, because back in the day I had dial-up and couldn't do multiplayer things. But the multiplayer in the Splinter Cell series is also really neat because it's called Spies versus Mercs, and basically it's set up where you have the spies, which are basically the Splinter Cells. They play like your regular gameplay, and then the mercs, which play like a first-person shooter. And then the the object of it is to defeat the other team, but you have completely different gameplay mechanics depending on what team you're on. So it was a really cool premise, and it sucks that we don't have a modern Splinter Cell game to play that with. But that's beside the point. That Splinter Cell Chaos Theory is an incredibly fun game. It was the first game in the series to not punish you if you got caught by an enemy. And they actually make a joke of it in the very first level of the game, where Sam Fisher is like, let me guess, 3 alarms and the mission's over. And Lambert's over the radio. He's like, no, Fisher, this isn't some video game. So it was notable because it was the first game in the series to give you the option of going loud and not being punished for it. Where the first 2 games were much, much more like stealth oriented. There were instances where you could go into combat mode and not really be punished for it, but there were a lot of missions in the first couple games where if you get caught, it's mission failure. So they kind of took that out for this one to make it a bit more accessible. And I think they made the right choice because Chaos Theory is just such an incredibly fun game. And I didn't know it back in the day because I had a PlayStation 2, so I got the PlayStation 2 version, but the Xbox version of the game actually had additional content and better graphics as well. Like they had like realistic for the time simulation of wetness on your clothes and stuff. So the opening level, it's actually raining and you're actually coming into this island by boat and then swimming in. So you can see right immediately, like just all like the water reflecting off of Sam's outfit and stuff that the PS2 didn't have just because it didn't have the horsepower that the Xbox did. Yeah. Come to find out, well after the fact that the Xbox versions of the Splinter Cell games are actually all superior to the PS2 versions. I think the first game definitely does. I don't know about the second game because it was developed by a different team. And the third game, they all have cut content on the PlayStation compared to the Xbox. So, and as far as I know, the PC versions are the same as the Xbox versions, but the PC versions are also very old.
Yeah.
But through GOG and Steam and stuff, they still run on modern PCs. But
yeah,
Chaos Theory is really good. And god damn it, Ubisoft, where is Splinter Cell? Ugh. Anyway, Lucas, number 19.
Number 19. It is the originator of the console-based MMO.
Oh.
And it was built for a console that was, in fact, the first to ship with a network adapter attached to it.
Oh.
The good old Sega Dreamcast with Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah.
I love Phantasy Star Online. I have put probably well over 2,000 hours into this game across the last
many
20 years.
Yeah, something like that.
I technically started on the GameCube version with episodes 1 and 2 plus, but that's like a GameCube enhanced remake of Phantasy Star Online version 2 from the Dreamcast. Anyways,
I have the Xbox version.
I also have the Xbox
that
version.
I found at a local store for $20, and I was like, "There's no way I'm not leaving without this."
Yeah, I picked mine up on eBay for like 30, but
nice.
I feel like that was a good call because that was also like right as Insignia, the reboot of the Xbox Live service for the original Xbox was announced, and they were also announcing support for Phantasy Star Online for Insignia, so I wanted to snatch that up before a potential price jump.
Yeah.
Because Phantasy Star Online is fantastic. Get 12 different, or well, depending on the version. I'm going to go with the one I'm familiar with because it's episodes 1 and 2 /1 and 2 plus. Blue Burst all are basically feature comparable. You get 12 different classes to choose from, as well as a unique section ID mechanic that affects your character drops and actually incentivizes players to trade rare items with each other.
Nice.
Because certain rare item drops are exclusive to certain section IDs. So, yeah. These 12 character classes are separated into like 3 different groups. There's the hunters that are like your melee focused characters, rangers that are like your range supports, and then forces that are your mages. And for multiplayer, you can form teams of up to 4 players to either just do playthroughs of the areas of whichever episode you choose, or you can do assorted multiplayer quests. But since getting a network adapter for a GameCube was basically impossible, and nowadays is very expensive because they didn't sell very well, because 3 of the 4 GameCube games that used online service were Phantasy Star Online. So it wasn't a very utilized accessory either. Yeah, the episode 1 offline quests alone have 51 offline quests for you to play through that tell a very like well put together story of the events of Pioneer 2 as they approach the planet Regul to attempt to colonize a new planet as their old planet has fallen to a state of apocalypse.
Better than the way PSO2 told its story.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phantasy Star Online is a very, very good game. It definitely paved the way for games like Final Fantasy XI and Final Fantasy XIV, which we discussed earlier in this episode for sure.
I believe Phantasy Star Universe even had online multiplayer.
Interesting. But yeah, in the year that it came out, it's like 2001. Like, that was the very infancy of console multiplayer online.
Yep.
And on the Dreamcast, of all things.
Yeah. And Sega was really pushing like online multiplayer to be like the future of that sort of game, or just gaming in general, really. And well, look where we are now.
Yep. The Dreamcast was so ahead of its time.
It was.
But Neal, our 20th game is yours.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
So, continuing the racing theme, I picked a Need for Speed game.
Ooh.
Nice.
While Need for Speed Underground was my first racing game that I owned and got really into, and it's the only one I've fully beaten to the end. Technically, my dad played the last stage because that stage was awful. But anyway, I'm actually going with Most Wanted, the 2005 version specifically, though. This game introduced open world. Well, no, Underground 2 introduced open world, but Most Wanted did it right. It helped that it was during the day. The map was huge. There was a ton more shortcuts, and what was most needed for the open world, the cops from Hot Pursuit were back.
Yeah.
And outrunning the cops in this game is exhilarating.
That was my favorite part of Hot Pursuit 2. We used to, actually, my brother and I in Hot Pursuit 2, we would turn around and go backwards on the track.
Mm-hmm.
And then just go until the cops caught us.
Right.
So much fun. Later games, they made it so you couldn't go backwards on the track. They would turn you around automatically, but Hot Pursuit 2 still had it.
Yeah. You could go backwards in Most Wanted 2005. But yeah, it was most fun just driving around the open world once you unlocked most of it. Unfortunately, the 2-player can't be both open world. However, you could race circuits in 2-player, and some of the maps had holes in the barriers that you could go through and explore the rest of the map.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I love a good out of bounds exploit.
Underground had that too, but most of the out of bounds would just result in you like falling through the ground and
Yeah.
But there were a few really cool ones where you didn't fall through the ground and would just end up. You could drive through scenery on the side of the road. Underground's great too, but Most Wanted's atmosphere is fantastic. Like there's rock and rap tracks playing while you're just driving around, but then when a cop sees you, it zooms in on the cop so you know where he is, and just this heavy driving music rock starts playing, and it's so good. I'd highly recommend Noodle's Need for Speed, A Brief History video over on YouTube. He goes through the history of all the Need for Speed games up to Most Wanted and spends about 10 minutes on Most Wanted. That pretty much gets any point I have to say across really well. So yeah.
Interesting tidbit.
Yeah.
I randomly acquired a copy of this game from I don't know where. It just showed up at my house one day. And I tried to play it, but the disc was too scratched up and it wouldn't work. So I've never played this game yet.
It's a good one. I highly recommend it. It's got the car customization from Underground and Underground 2.
Yes.
Yeah. And like also during the campaign, race other racers for pink slips for their cars too.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I remember playing this game a little bit over at my grandparents' house. One of my cousins brought their PS2 over, and I started a new campaign and got far enough for the first pink slip race, and I ended up getting the guy's it was a Volkswagen Golf, beating him in the Chevy Cobalt SS.
Nice.
Which of course I painted orange because of my favorite color. And that was another cool thing too, is that vehicle customizations would decrease your recognizability with the police officers. So if you had a really high wanted meter, you could slap a new coat of paint on there and they wouldn't be any the wiser.
Just like in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
I never do.
GTA 4 had that too.
I never did any of that just because I had a theme that all my cars would be chrome or just matte gold with black racing stripes.
Nice.
Down the center.
Nice.
So I was incredibly recognizable, but I did not care.
Yeah.
Once you got your car fast enough, I don't recommend this in real life, but if a good way if you get spotted to get out of the car chase is just T-bone the cop immediately. Ward into the side of the cop. The cop dies.
Yep.
Chase is over.
Yep.
I mean, it probably would work in real life, but
and then you turn on some body count and listen to Cop Killer as you're speeding off.
Nice.
That would get you Most Wanted list for sure. Yep. Moving on though, Colin, lucky number 21.
21. My next game is Resident Evil 2 Remake, because we need some spooks on this list. And I think this is the best spooks. Actually, well, I think it's the best spooks to get you into spooks. And Resident Evil 2, the remake in 2019, that game, I bought it when it came out and noped out of it fairly early on. I got to the police station and I was low on ammo, and these things called lickers, which are basically like little lizards that are just all like skin and muscle tissue. No skin. They're just like all bare muscle tissue nastiness with giant tongues. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
These things sound like something I'd see on the cover of a Cannibal Corpse album.
Yes.
But anyway, I was out of ammo and I was scared of the lickers, so I noped out of the game fairly early on. Finally couple of years ago when I got my Steam Deck, I was like, hey, Resident Evil 2 supposedly runs great on Steam Deck. It does, by the way. I'm going to play through it finally on my Steam Deck. And I finally sat down and played through it. Finally got to Mr. X the first time, which is just this giant hulking monster that stalks you throughout the entire police station. And there's nothing you can do. You can't kill him. You can just stun him for a moment. And in doing so, you end up using a lot of ammo, which is kind of a precious resource in this game. It's very, very tense. And playing through it finally kind of resolved a lot of fears I had of horror games. Because since playing Resident Evil 2 Remake all the way through to the finish, I also played Resident Evil 3 and the Dead Space Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake, which prior to Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4 OG was the only, also Resident Evil 5, but that's hardly a horror game at that point. It's just an action game with some slightly zombified people at that point. But
wasn't Resident Evil remakes, like, didn't you play through it almost start to finish in one sitting on your Steam?
Yeah, Resident Evil 3. Yeah. It is notoriously only a 6-hour game.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Resident Evil 2 is a bit longer than that, but it's if you are curious about dipping your toes into Resident Evil's franchise or just the survival horror genre in general, play Resident Evil 2. It's about the best example you could ask for of what this genre of game has to represent. And it's so good. I love that game so much. And there's 2 different characters you can play as, and each one has a different path through the campaign. So you can play through it 2 times and have a slightly different story that you go through parts of the campaign, which is pretty neat. And that was actually in the original game too, which is pretty interesting for a game that came out in the late 90s to have 2 distinct paths like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lucas, number 22.
How about another arcade game?
Let's do it.
But often underrepresented segment of video games, I find. Yes, mostly because we don't have arcades anymore.
Unfortunately.
Really. Like, closest thing we have really regularly is like places like Craig's Cruisers and Dave and Buster's and Chuck E. Cheese if you're like 5 years old. Like, the arcade games there are all like skill games for tickets. Like, this is a proper arcade game. It's Majestic 12, Space Invaders Part 4.
Space Invaders!
Yeah. Why this oddly specific entry in the Space Invaders series? Because it's my favorite. Has, like, very nice, like, very, like, high-res detailed graphics for a Space Invaders game of all things. But it also kind of introduces a, like, upgrade capsule system, kind of like you'd find in another fantastic Taito arcade title, Arkanoid, which is like Breakout, but you get cool items that fall from the blocks sometimes that do different things to your paddle. They brought a similar concept over to Space Invaders Part 4, so you get like cool stuff like a crazy laser, or like there's a butterfly that flies across the screen and causes all the enemies to freeze in place and make them very easy to shoot. Or you get like side pods that will shoot additional shots up at the aliens. All while still maintaining that classic Space Invaders formula. It also has, interestingly enough, like multiple branching paths. I think it's like a 10-level campaign, start to finish to the final boss. But like, after you beat the first level, you get to pick between a handful of, I think it's like 2 or 3 different level paths. And then from there, you each get to pick more level paths from those, and so on and so forth, until you get to the end of the game. It's like a big inverted pyramid. So it's a lot of variety, a lot of like good replay value in there. And of course, it's classic Space Invaders.
It's like the original shoot 'em up, and yeah, Space Invaders has long been one of my favorite arcade series, and this one I think is the best.
I've always had a soft spot for Space Invaders. I've got I used to anyway, the Game Boy version. I got it with my Super Game Boy for my Super Nintendo.
Nice.
When I was a kid.
Yeah. I have, I think, Space Invaders Extreme 1 for the DS. Can't remember if I have 1 and 2 or just 1. I think it's just 1. Yeah, for the longest time on my DS, or like for car trips on my DS, I would have Namco Museum in the Game Boy Advance slot, and then like Space Invaders Extreme or Arkanoid DS in the DS slot, and just those 5 arcade games between the 2 games would tide me over for the entire trip.
Nice. Time for game number 23, Neal.
That would be Ratchet & Clank 3 for the PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3 if you have the collection. Up Your Arsenal, as it is known in its
Yeah.
To be fair, Up Your Arsenal did work as a title really well, because while Ratchet & Clank 2 added a whole bunch more weapons and a little bit of upgrading, Ratchet & Clank 3 went crazy with upgrading your weapons. Every single weapon can be upgraded multiple times, and made every weapon very fun to use, because once you got to a certain level with one weapon and you're used to it, one of your older weapons levels up, and suddenly that one's more powerful. It was great. Ratchet & Clank, 2 little aliens, an alien and a robot in a science fiction universe that is hilarious, and if you can tell by the title, a little bit PG-13. I absolutely highly recommend getting the first 3 Ratchet & Clank games. I think those are the best of the series. The PS3 trilogy has great gameplay and all, but the story, the edge that the first 3 Ratchet & Clank games had is kind of lost. They still have some jokes, but the humor isn't quite as strong, and they focus more on telling a story than what the original Ratchet & Clank 3 games were, which was really more to just have a fun time. And Ratchet & Clank 3 is the only mainline game to have multiplayer. It is not a spin-off like Full Frontal Assault and Deadlocked, so the gameplay is very similar to what you play in the game. In fact, there is a mode in the game where it is basically just the multiplayer gameplay. So it's the most complete game, or most complete version of that. If you have 3 PS3 controllers or a PS2 with a multi-tap, I highly recommend playing this game with more than one person. Me and my dad had a blast with it long ago. Me and a couple other of my friends played Ratchet & Clank 4-player. Unfortunately, the rest of us had no idea what was going on. So the person that owned the game was winning everything. But
Naturally.
highly recommend this game. And just all the original Ratchet & Clanks, especially 2 and 3. But yeah, All for One was originally going to be called 4-play. I rest my case. Colin. 24.
24. Well, it's time to talk about a series that I have grown quite fond of over the last year and some odd months. The Yakuza series. But rather a spin-off of the Yakuza series, which is the game that got me into the whole thing. And since playing this game, I have played through its sequel, another spin-off, and the first 6 Yakuza games, plus the prequel, Yakuza 0. I am talking about the game Judgment, which, as mentioned, is a spin-off, but it maintains the core gameplay of the mainline Yakuza games. And why I think you should start here versus the mainline series is because a lot of people will look at the mainline Yakuza series and be like, wow, that's a lot of games to get caught up on. That's kind of intimidating. And you're not 100% wrong, but you should get over that. But
Yeah.
aside from that, if you can't, and you're just curious and you want to dip your toes in, but you don't want a large commitment that the long storied history of the mainline franchise has, then Judgment offers a great alternative by, like I said, being the same core gameplay, but a more concise and standalone story, being just the one game, and then it also got a sequel that if you like this one, then you can play the sequel and then you're done because there's just two. But what I like about Judgment so much is it's an interesting take on the beat 'em up franchise because you're not a Yakuza. You are a detective, and the game's story is actually a murder mystery where you are trying to track down the guy that is responsible for like gouging the eyes out of these Yakuza and just dumping their bodies out in the middle of an alleyway. And there's this whole like conspiracy with like this random cure for Alzheimer's that gets wrapped up in it. It's a wild story, but it's very, 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 very engaging, very heartfelt. There's a lot of very emotional storytelling in the game, and the characters are all phenomenal. It has one of my favorite casts in the franchise. And yeah, it's such a great starting point. If you have been curious about the Yakuza series, and you can frequently get this game or any of the Yakuza games on sale for dirt cheap whenever a Steam sale comes along, I highly recommend giving Judgment a try.
It honestly sounds more like a game that would interest me than a mainline Yakuza game, just because knowing what I know about how I feel about Grand Theft Auto and LA Noire. Like, just playing the role of a detective and solving crimes just interested in me more. So,
Well, I mean, the Grand Theft Auto comparison in general is very baseline in
very
my
baseline.
it like the only real similarities it has with Grand Theft Auto, like Yakuza with Grand Theft Auto, is it takes place in the big city.
Yeah.
Like, because there's no driving in the Yakuza games, there's no guns. I mean, there are guns, but they don't function.
There's
They
organized
don't.
crime.
Yeah, I mean, they don't function the same way that they do in Grand Theft Auto,
Yeah.
where you're not like they're. Yeah, but
I mean,
but
the draw though for me was like the solving crimes because I always enjoyed that.
Yeah, the murder mystery aspect is what really drew me in as well. And it won't be the last murder mystery I discuss in this episode. But anyway, we are halfway done now. Lucas, number 25.
Whoa, we're halfway there.
Whoa!
Squidward on a chair.
Lemon on a pear.
Please don't take us there.
Chicken on a bear.
Well, we're halfway through, and somehow I managed to resist talking about a Mega Man game until now.
Mega Man!
It's quite often referred to as like the best Mega Man game on the NES. Often the best Mega Man game in the classic Mega Man series. It is none other than Mega Man 2.
Mega Man 2.
Almost sort of a Skunkworks project for the dev team, because sales for Mega Man 1 were okay. So Capcom didn't really want to put too much focus on making a sequel to it, but the team members involved, like Keiji and Afane, wanted to push for making a second game. So they kind of worked on it in spare time, and redid the game engine, tightened up the controls, made it play so much better than Mega Man 1. Introduced the transport items, which were sort of the forerunner to Rush. Upped the Robot Master count from 6 to 8 with the all-time classics of Metal Man, Quick Man, Wood Man, Heat Man, Air Man. Bubble Man, Flash Man, Crash Man. Crash Man's kind of forgettable. See our Mega Man Robot Masters tier list video, as well as introducing a plot twist for the Wily Castle as well, where Dr. Wily might be an alien.
What?
Yeah, I would say Mega Man 2 stands not only like head and shoulders, but like the rest of the torso and legs as well, above Mega Man 1 in terms of Mega Man gameplay. And I mean, we all longtime viewer or listeners of the podcast will know my feelings on Mega Man 3 and how it was kind of a downgrade versus 2, and the later trilogy with 4, 5, and 6 are generally only okay, but better than 3. So Mega Man 2 is kind of the highlight of the NES games. Also, I think probably the most, well, simultaneously like the most well balanced, but also kind of terribly balanced as far as game weapons go, because the metal blade exists and everything is weak to it. But the game's weapons all feel great to use too, so like it doesn't feel like you have to crush on the metal blade. Yeah, my pick for number 25.
All right, Neal. We are now beyond the halfway point with number 26.
Correct. Here's a weird one. Bomb Chicken.
What?
Bomb Chicken.
You probably haven't heard of Bomb Chicken. Bomb Chicken is about a chicken.
That's very
who's
delicious.
very, very fat.
Oh.
Well, yeah. If you
Like,
fall
man,
into
this is
a
some
fiery
bomb
death
chicken.
of some kind. Hold on. I'll get into it. Bomb Chicken is about a chicken who's very, very fat. And he's so fat, he can't jump. However, this is a puzzle platformer, so he needs to move up to continue the game. And how he does this is by laying bombs that are literally his entire size, which is why he's so fat. So if you need to get up one ledge, just lay a bomb and then walk away from it before it explodes, because if the bomb explodes, you will turn into a chicken dinner.
Makes sense.
Delicious.
Typical
And-
cartoon fashion.
Yes. This is a really fun puzzle platformer. If you like that kind of game, you're going to love this.
Good news. I
Honestly,
do.
what tuned me into this is the game animation is all sprite work, and it is fantastic. It has so much character. This bomb chicken is so cute. Watching him waddle around and his giant body holding a bomb inside of him. It's great. Highly recommend this little game. Pretty sure it goes on Steam sale pretty frequently. It's not a huge game. Yeah, it generally goes as low as $6 fairly frequently. Highly recommend this little guy. It's on Switch. I'm sure it's elsewhere. Colin, what's next?
Number 27 is next. And that game is Gears of War. There's a Megadeth song about it. But anyway, Gears of War, the original one, came out on the Xbox 360 a long time ago.
Yep.
And I only recently just played through it for the first time just late last year. And it is very, very good. I had played a little bit of Gears of War 2 back in the day, co-op with a friend, but I'd never actually played all the way through the original game. I'd always tried it and then dropped it a couple levels in. But I finally sat down and played all the way through it, and it's just a phenomenal third-person cover shooter. It's so much fun. Like, you just play as these absurdly large, gigantic, beefy men trudging through this battlefield, and all hell's breaking loose, and everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong, and you just have to freaking pick up and trudge your way through it to the end of this game and stuff. And you're fighting this alien race known as the Locusts, and they have basically burrowed underneath the earth, where they are propagating and kind of trying to take over and destroy mankind and convert the earth into their own planet, essentially. And you're trying to stop them. And there's, oh my God, it's just, it's a really, really fun game, especially to play co-op, which I wish I could have played co-op with somebody as I was playing through it, but I couldn't. I was just playing single player. Still a fun game. There's lots of cool guns. There's lots of gore and violence and just, oh my God. It's just the epitome of dumb, stupid, gory fun. And I highly recommend checking out the original Gears of War, especially if you own an Xbox. But also, it's on PC. Unfortunately, the PC version is locked to the Microsoft Store, which is a little bit
Oh no.
But it's also on PC Game Pass. So there's that. I first tried it out playing it over cloud streaming, and it actually ran surprisingly well for a shooter on cloud streaming, which was pretty neat. And I decided it's like, okay, I'm going to install this now and just play it locally because I'm getting into this. And it's such a fun 9 to 10 hour campaign. Highly recommend the original Gears of War. Now, we are on to 28 with Lucas.
Well, another something different for me. It's a Sega Genesis game.
What?
It's Gunstar Heroes. The sort of run and gun action platformer from Treasure. And it is honestly one of the most fun and colorful run and gun games that I've ever played. Each level brings its own unique mechanics. All of the weapons feel great to use. Gunstars red and blue are out to save the world to stop an evil organization from summoning an ancient evil locked behind a bunch of gems. And get 4 different weapons to choose from in the game, and you get to combine them too.
Cool.
As well as 2 different shot types with trying to think it's fixed and forward shot type. So one of them will lock you into place, but you get 8-way aiming, and the other one is a more traditional, it's keep moving while you're shooting sort of deal. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Probably one of the standout levels is the Dice Palace, where you and your second player, if you have one, basically get to play a board game within a platforming game, where you get to roll a dice in advanced spaces in this warehouse, and different things will happen depending on the board game space, including mini boss fights, and it's a lot of fun. There's also in addition to your 4 different weapons and your ability to combine those 4 together, there's also melee attacks, which you can even use on your teammate if you have a teammate. You can throw them across the screen. The task uses it to comedic effect while also using it as a way of moving faster through the levels. It's fun to watch. Just take turns throwing Gunstar Red and Gunstar Blue across the screen to go faster. But yeah, it's a lot of fun for a co-op shoot 'em up type game. Honestly, I'd take this over a Contra any day.
I've heard a lot of good things about it.
There's a very good reason why it's $100 Genesis game nowadays.
Ooh,
I sadly found out.
that hurts.
Yeah, they had a copy at our favorite local game store along with a copy of Phantasy Star 2, and I got curious about what the price was, and they were both I think $105 and $110.
Oof.
So I was sad.
Oof.
And then 2 weeks later, on a whim, I checked out a game store after getting an oil change and found a copy of Mega Man 3 or Mega Man X3, and
which was significantly more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was after Christmas when we had Christmas money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Neal, number 29.
My next pick is a game you think you know, but you most likely don't know as much as most of you probably don't know this. My pick is Meat Boy.
Meat!
Anybody here played Super Meat Boy?
I've played Super Meat Boy, but this is not Meat Boy.
Correct. Meat Boy is the Flash game on Newgrounds, made by the person who made Super Meat Boy before Super Meat Boy came out. So this is a free-to-play Flash game that you can now play with Newgrounds player Raffle. It existed long before this came into mainstream consciousness. For a long time, Meat Boy was one of the icons of Newgrounds back in the day. And when Super Meat Boy did come out, they were heavily advertising it because it's their thing almost.
Yeah. It's like a homegrown success.
Yes, which is super cool. There are other Flash games from Newgrounds that flourished and became more than just a Flash game, but this is the main one that became not only just a console game, but also a franchise that was really popular.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is free. And if you like Super Meat Boy, you're definitely going to like Meat Boy.
Cool.
It's a little more basic, but the gameplay is still great. And if you haven't played Super Meat Boy, try Meat Boy first. If you don't get into it there, you might not get into it with Super Meat Boy, and you won't have spent any money.
Yeah.
And also, this is just a cool part of web browser game history.
Yeah.
If you play this game in the future, when you're at a dinner party and they bring up Super Meat Boy like they do at dinner parties, you can be like, I played the original Meat Boy. You have a little story.
Yeah. Super Meat Boy is a lot of fun.
It is, yes.
It's a bit like Celeste, and it's just a pure movement-based platform game.
Yes.
And that's just so much fun to try and learn stages and go fast.
Yep. But yeah, Colin, what is your pick for number 30?
Number 30. Well,
60% of the way there.
I'm going to follow up my last game suggestion with an acronym of GOW and go with another game with an acronym of GOW for maximum confusion. Because this one is, instead of Gears of War, now we're going to talk about a God of War. And specifically, the 2018 God of War from the PlayStation 4. Because this one kind of was a soft reboot for the franchise and saw Kratos taking on Norse mythology rather than Greek mythology, but also with a child at his side, because he is now a father. But his wife has passed away. And the premise behind the game is they're on a pilgrimage to take the ashes of his late wife to spread them across the mountainside in the realm of Jotunheim, the land of the giants, where she is from. And all along the way, you just get into sort of all kinds of mishaps because Norse gods aren't too happy with Kratos, the one responsible for killing the entire Greek pantheon, being in their neck of the woods now. And you end up killing some Norse gods and making some other Norse gods kind of angry at you. And all along the way, Kratos is learning to channel his rage and anger because now he has a son that he has to be an example for. And just the dynamics between the two are so well written, and I could never really get into the God of War series prior to this game, mostly because it's just I don't know, something about the gameplay just never felt very good to me in spite of being a fan of character action games like they were. And
David Joffe's quick time event simulator.
Yeah, and I never really cared for Kratos as a character back then either, because while he did have a slight hair of depth to his character, he was basically just angry guy kill things 99% of the time in the original trilogy, and I couldn't find a way to care for him. But they from 5 minutes into God of War 2018, I immediately cared about Kratos in the way I never cared about him before. And his relationship with Atreus and how that developed and grew throughout the entire game just blew me away. It was such a great, heartfelt story. And it didn't have, it had a fair share of, humor and stuff, too. Like, there's a character called Mimir that accompanies you. Famously, you cut his head off, and his head is just tied to Kratos' waist. And he accompanies you, and he tells you a bunch of, that's where you get, a lot of the lore of the Norse mythology and stuff throughout the game. And he'll always, whenever you're riding your little boat across the river and stuff to get from one area to another, he'll tell a story along the way to kind of break the silence and stuff like that. And it's always really interesting to listen to and really fun to listen to. And it's just an all-around well-made game, and the sequel somehow manages to be even better. But yeah, God of War 2018 is a fantastic game, and it's on Steam now, so you can play it on PC, and I highly recommend you do that. But Lucas, number 31.
We're gonna keep getting newer and newer with consoles and go to the N64 now. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, or is it Ocarina of Time? I've heard
Ocarina
both.
of Tim.
I've heard both, and people get mad when you say either of them, so I don't know.
It's Ocarina of Tim.
Yeah.
Magic Flute of Time.
More like Brokerina of Time. Thanks, stale reference manipulation. Anyways, N64 didn't have a Metroid game to talk about, so... No, not really. Ocarina of Time is... Link to the Past exists, but Ocarina of Time probably would be my favorite if Link to the Past didn't exist. As far as Zelda games go. It's also one of the first N64 games that my family owned, because I think we got it probably used on a garage sale. We got the fancy special Pikachu edition
Nice.
N64.
Lucky.
Yeah, and we got Ocarina of Time and Mario Kart 64 used at the same time, and it immediately was this is a really cool game. I have played through it tons. Nowadays, though, I tend to stick to the GameCube version because I picked up a copy of that a while ago, and just the form factor of the GameCube controller better generally. Speedrunners use the Wii Virtual Console version. Anyways, it was the first Zelda to use a fully 3D environment, because that was the whole thing with the N64, was bringing games into 3D. Finally, although Star Fox was on the SNES and also 3D, but it's got cool gameplay mechanics with traveling back and forth between the present and 7 years into the future. And it's a Zelda game, so of course you meet Zelda and she tells you to go defeat Ganon. So that's how that works. But yeah, it's an absolute classic of a game, and it's also being an N64 game, it's also plenty broken as far as speedrun mechanics, which makes it a really cool game for trying to play through in odd fashions. I can't remember the last time I played through the intended dungeon order, because it's more fun to do forest escape and go to the second dungeon first. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this was the first N64 game I ever played. And every single time I got a chance to play it at my friend's house, his older brother would be a little bit further along. So it's the first time we played it, we were still in Kakariko Village as young Link. And then a couple of weeks had passed, and I finally got a chance to go to my friend's house again and play it. And then suddenly we were adult Link with a blue tunic, and I was like, wait, is this the same game? I just remember the big, huge lake.
Yeah. Shoutouts to the Water Temple, my favorite. Everyone else hates it, but I don't.
It's also the first game I bought for my 3DS when I bought my 3DS back in 2011.
It's a good game.
I never even beat it on that. I got close.
I actually saw a really cool exhibition run from Zelda Speedruns, where I think it was... I don't remember the Ocarina of Time 3D runner's name, but it was that guy versus ZFG, and they were racing Ocarina of Time and Ocarina of Time 3D for I forget if it was 100% or if it was MST, but it was a really cool run to watch, and it was neat seeing the different speedrunning mechanics between the two games, but also like seeing how the games had crossover of speedrun mechanics, because not everything that was broken in the N64 game made it to the bug fix stage in the 3DS game.
Nice. Huh. But Neal, what do you got for our 30-second game?
I have Hover.
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 It rhymes with Glover.
Is this the weird first-person game that was included in the Microsoft Windows 95 Plus pack? Or is this a different Hover?
This is a different Hover. This is a tribute to Jet Set Radio.
Interesting.
Yeah. Before we had, Cyberpunk Bomb Rush that we have now, we had Hover. This was your only choice for a Jet Set Radio clone until Team Reptile made theirs. And while I can't speak for that one, I don't own it yet, I can say that Hover is a ton of fun. It focuses more on the platforming and racing than a lot of the grinding. Well, grinding is there, but it's not as focused on, and there's a lot more minimal focusing on graffiti, which Bomb Rush is going more for that. It does get 2 tracks by Hideki Naganuma, one of which is better than the other, but that one is really good, so it makes up for it. And if you want to experience a Jet Set Radio type adventure, I highly recommend this. After playing this game, I finally got a way to play Jet Set Radio, and I personally didn't prefer Jet Set Radio, the OG one, over Hover, so I kind of just dropped off of it and went back to Hover for a while. This is also one that I have a Let's Play in editing purgatory. I only have a little bit into it, but I would go back and play this game after that recording and just explore this city that they give for you to just explore and jump around. There are missions all over the place. There's collectibles. It's a good time. And you can also play with friends as well. There is a online mode, which, highly recommend this one. For the gameplay, I will say the story is kind of silly. You're a group of gamers instead of street artists, and you are protesting the government's banning of gaming by delivering game balls to people that work as consoles and also basketballs. It's a very strange story, but it's a good game. Passing it over to Colin with number 33.
Number 33 is Fire Emblem Engage, which is the latest Fire Emblem game, which released last year. And I picked this one mainly because it has the best gameplay in the entire franchise, for starters. And after the previous Fire Emblem game, Three Houses brought in a lot of new people to the franchise, this one kind of got a lot of hate when it came out because it went back to a more traditional model for the story and gameplay and everything, as compared to Three Houses, where Three Houses had a lot of Persona-y stuff where you were going around talking to other characters and developing relationships. And there was a lot of doing downtime stuff at the school and then going to battle afterward. But the battle system in Three Houses was way stripped down compared to previous Fire Emblem games, where it didn't even have the rock, paper, scissors type weakness chart that the series was known for anymore, where Engage restored that. And in addition to that, it was kind of a celebration of the franchise's anniversary, where it took the protagonists from many, many, many of the Fire Emblem games. I think it might have been the protagonist from every Fire Emblem game up to that point had a role in Fire Emblem Engage, where they were basically characters that you summoned to your side with a group of rings, essentially, that powered up your characters that bonded with them. And it was a really cool gameplay mechanic that kind of lets you like mix and match original, like classic Fire Emblem characters with new characters, and depending on like certain attributes and stuff, they can power each other up and do some cool special moves, and some combinations of characters are really, really broken. But the story itself was actually really, really interesting too. It has some nice twists and turns to it, and it was very, very cheesy in a cheesy anime style that I really enjoyed. But this game gets especially from people that got into the series with Three Houses, this game gets a lot of unnecessary and unwarranted hate, and I think it is a better game than Three Houses, especially a better Fire Emblem game in particular. And it's a lot more of a focused story. It doesn't drag on as long as Three Houses does. And yeah, it's by far and away the best gameplay in the series, because previously in the franchise, when you would get into a battle, it would go to its own little battle window, where Fire Emblem Engage, for the first time in the series, wherever your character engages in a fight on the map, that's where the battle takes place. The camera just zooms in on your character and then the fight happens, which is something that it's never really done before. And it was really, really cinematic and cool. And there's a lot of like good strategy in this game, because it had the rock, paper, scissors weaknesses brought back, in addition to some other things that they added that were new and unique to the game. And I think if you are curious about the Fire Emblem franchise, this is by far the best one to start with now, I think. You get to peek into all of the protagonists of the past in a way, and then you get a fun story that kind of brings it all together as well. And yeah, Fire Emblem Engage is phenomenal, and you should try it. But now, number 34 goes to Lucas.
Keeping the ball rolling on a different console from me is Star Fox Assault on the GameCube. Made in collaboration with Namco, and kind of brings in like the traditional sort of like 3D rail shooter, R-Wing dogfighting that, you know, Star Fox 64 and Star Fox on the SNES introduced, as well as like bringing back the Landmaster for like land warfare. But it also like adds third-person shooter type elements to it, where you actually like get to play as Fox on the surface of various worlds for different missions, fighting an evil alien biometal life form called the Aperoids, and it's a lot of fun. It also has a multiplayer mode, which me and my friends Ryan and James have spent a ton of time playing. We kind of made up our own gameplay mode where we would play the missile launcher mode, and we would all like find hiding spots on Dinosaur Planet with the goal of like trying to, from these stationary positions, guide a guided missile to each other to kill each other. It was great. And then, you know, just play a normal mode, and I'd get completely curb stomped because James can outpilot me with R-Wing easily. But yeah, the campaign is also very cool. Got a cool story to it. Because the Aperoids are sort of like biomechanical virus, and they like attach themselves to life forms and also computer systems, and will mutate and possess them, and then do really cool things like use memories of hosts that they have absorbed to kind of mess with them, including like during the final boss fight, like it somehow manages to pulls like memories of Fox's father, James McLeod, and use it to speak to Fox with his dad's voice to try and get into his head. Yeah. Really cool Star Fox game. Probably my favorite of the ones that I've played. Definitely check it out. I can't believe Andros died from Pigma.
Neal, game 35.
My next pick is Super Monkey Ball 2 for the GameCube.
Missed opportunity to just call it Super Monkey Balls.
True.
But they had 4 balls in the first one.
Super Monkey Ball is a marble rolling game, except for some weird and very creative decision, they made it a hamster ball with a monkey in it. Hence, Monkey Ball. This game has some of the best marble rolling gameplay out there. Number 1 on the GameCube. I believe it's also on the PlayStation 2. It's really good too. These games nailed that style of gameplay.
Yeah.
And you can do tons of wacky shortcuts on these games. Look up a speedrun of these games if you have some spare time. They're ridiculous. It's got multiplayer. You can pass the controller back and forth or that effect and play the regular stages. There's also mini games. The Target game was always my favorite, but Dogfight was pretty good. Yeah, I mostly play Target and Dogfight, honestly. But
yeah, Monkey Target in SMB1 is so much fun.
Yeah, agreed. Also, I picked Super Monkey Ball 2 over 1, mainly because did you remember that the Super Monkey Ball 2 had a story mode?
What?
Cutscenes?
What?
Yeah, I didn't think so. It's really weird. All the monkeys speak in like Animal Crossing talk where it's not actual speaking.
Huh.
And there's subtitles. And they're fighting this baboon guy in a zeppelin. It's real strange.
Huh.
But almost makes it more silly. And I became a well-known Sega character too because of these games.
Yeah.
And he shows up in the tennis and racing games that Sega put out.
Do the other monkeys ever show up in those too? Or is it just
I don't know for sure.
Have you ever seen a Super Monkey Ball arcade cabinet?
I've heard of them.
The joystick is a banana.
That's awesome. But yeah, if you've never played a marble game, this is definitely a good place to start. The team on this game did fantastic with both Super Monkey Ball 1 or 2. Whichever you can get your hands on, they're both great.
Yeah.
They also had a brand deal with Dole Bananas.
Yeah.
Moving on, Colin, what is your pick for 36?
36. Well, I mentioned a second murder mystery earlier on when I was talking about Judgment, and now we're going to talk about that murder mystery because it is Persona 4 Golden, which is part murder mystery, part slice of life anime, part dungeon crawling RPG, part kind of monster collecting. It's a fantastic game. And my favorite Persona game in the franchise, partially because of the murder mystery story, but also I love the cast of characters. I love the small town type feel of Inaba, and just everything about this game I love so much. It was my introduction to the series back when I got my PS Vita, probably about 10 years or so now ago. And I finally beat it for the first time earlier this year. And it's a fantastic game if you like murder mysteries and RPGs and fun characters. And it's just a great game. You should play Persona 4 Golden. If you are even passingly interested in giving the Persona series a shot, you should play Persona 4 Golden because it's really, really good and it draws you in from the very beginning. It doesn't waste your time like the previous game. in the franchise does for the first like 3 hours of the game, where there's just nothing going on and they are telling you just, you should go to bed. You should go to bed. No, within the first hour of the game, somebody dies. And you're like, holy crap, who did it? And then suddenly you're trying to find out who did it. And then it just spirals on from there. And it is such a great, fun time. Memorable cast of characters. They all have their own unique quirks and everything, because that's just Persona 4 is so good. I love it so much.
Get mad at the local Walmart.
Yes. Every day's great at your Juness. And with that, game number 37, Lucas.
Did you really think I was only going to talk about one Mega Man game?
No.
Well, I'm glad I didn't disappoint, because for game number 37, I've got Mega Man X. Talked about this one before on one of our That One Game episodes, but kind of the classic Mega Man series could run, or walk, so that the Mega Man X games could run, really. This was the first Mega Man game for the new 16-bit SNES, and boy howdy did they go all out with like quality of gameplay, as well as introducing new mechanics to the series that kind of stayed unique to the X series, even when like a proper classic series Mega Man game appeared with 7, and then proceeded to no longer be unique because they basically made Bass play like X in Mega Man and Bass, but that's beside the point. Taking place a whole century after the events of the classic series, Mega Man X has X and his friend Zero fighting Maverick Reploids in order to keep humanity safe in sort of a increasingly more post-apocalyptic setting because of the ongoing war of Reploids turning Maverick and wanting to either kill humans or just don't want to be associated with them anymore, which is fair.
Yeah, Mega Man X is definitely of the Mega Man games the most accessible to jump in and try.
Yeah. Also, it features some very fast-paced gameplay, especially after you get through the intro stage and get the dash boots upgrade and Chill Penguin stage, and gain the ability to dash, and then you can get other armor upgrades and really bring out different mechanics in the game. Probably next most noteworthy is the Buster upgrade that lets you charge the special weapons you get from defeating the Mavericks before you fight Sigma. And yeah, it's also just a really well crafted platformer.
The wall jumping doesn't suck.
It's true. Yeah, that was another new introduction to the series, is the ability to wall jump, which opened up a whole bunch of level design possibilities.
Yeah, it did.
Mega Man X almost might be a better starting point for Mega Man games than the classic series. For as much as I love the classic series, especially Mega Man 2.
It's very good. And we have an entire episode about it.
It's
if
true.
you want to know more. But for now, Neal, number 38.
Well, if my last choice, Super Monkey Ball, if you have completed both those games, I'm kidding. Nobody's completed both those games. They're awfully hard at the end.
Yeah.
If you have an appetite for another Marble game that's new, I highly recommend Marble It Up. There's a few different versions of this game. There's Marble It Up Ultra, which used to be Marble It Up. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, it's another marble game that is actually actual marbles. You do get a jump mechanic, which is something Super Monkey Ball added to their later games with less success. But this game handles it pretty well. Good power-ups that don't take away from things too much. The level design is really good. It's just a solid marble rolling game, and it's on current systems. It's definitely on Steam. It is indeed on all consoles now. Yeah, Marble It Up Ultra is definitely a cool one. The level design honestly reminds me of Sonic Special stages. Lots of like space and crazy colors, nebulas. It looks real cool. Colin, number 39.
Bayonetta.
Ah,
Yeah. The crazy, over the top action starring a woman who wears her hair and attacks with it. Yes.
this is a
Bayonetta.
wild concept.
It is an incredibly fun game. It's so ridiculously over the top. And if you want to kind of dip your toes in the character action genre, which it is, like the Devil May Cries and whatnot, I think Bayonetta is a great starting point. All three of the games are playable on the Nintendo Switch now. And oh my God, it's so much fun. It's got a lot of like kind of religious theming to it in a way, but kind of you're going to war against the angels and you are an umbral witch. Umbral witches famously, at least in Bayonetta's case, her clothes, as I mentioned, are her hair, and all of her attacks utilize her hair. It's stupid and dumb and really fun, and you get to beat the crap out of evil angels, and you get to ride a motorcycle up the side of a rocket, and then you get to punch God in the face so hard that he flies into the sun and dies. It's fun. It's oh my God. Definitely give Bayonetta a shot.
Yeah.
It's one of the most ridiculous games you'll ever play in your life, and it's so fun.
If I remember correctly, when Bayonetta 1 and 2 were released on the Wii U, I think they included the Varia suit as an outfit.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's not afraid to completely take things to 11 and then break the dial off, and it's such a fun game. And the sequels are both phenomenal as well, but I think the first game is definitely the place to start just cuz it's wild. It is so wild. But anyway, we are now into our final 10. Lucas, what do you got for number 40?
Well, talked about the granddaddy of all first-person shooters. Now I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, the king of arena shooters with Unreal Tournament.
Unreal.
Yeah, I was introduced to Unreal Tournament on the PlayStation 2 version, and then later found out that there was a PC version.
I
Just
had
in
that
time-
PlayStation 2 version.
It's
Well,
pretty
Unreal 2000. I had Unreal 2004 on the PS2. It's basically the same thing, just more stuff, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's
Yeah.
newer version of the Unreal Engine, different weapons. Unreal Tournament 2004 was sort of a fixed version of Unreal Tournament 2003 because people didn't really care for UK or UT 2K3 all that much, whereas like 2004 is like a proper sequel to Unreal Tournament.
Mm.
But yeah, it's no real campaign to the game. It is entirely just arena shooter action, very much in the same way that like Quake 3 Arena was. Got all sorts of modes to play between like your classic deathmatch, then capture the flag, assault, control points, and a really good weapons loadout with fun stuff like the bio rifle, black cannon, the absolute classic rocket launcher, and even more on top of that is that every weapon in the game has two modes of fire. For example, the flak cannon, since it's probably my favorite weapon in the game, and we've definitely talked about it before in favorite video game weapons. It has two modes of firing. The primary fire shoots a wad or like big shotgun spread of black pieces, and the alt fire will fire just like a big, almost like a grenade launcher sort of fashion, just a big bullet that will insta jib whoever it hits because it's explosive. Of course, it's explosive. It's Unreal. Yeah, I've spent many hours playing spot matches, even in absence of people to play it with. Because unfortunately, not only did the multiplayer servers for Unreal Tournament get shut down by Epic Games, but the game's also been delisted for a good few years now, and even on sites like GOG, because it's not Fortnite. Thanks, Epic. There was even like a active or like perpetual beta Unreal Tournament that they had on Epic Game Store back when that first launched, and that's no longer online either. But anyways, yeah, it's like as far as multiplayer shooters go, I think this trumps Halo for me even.
Hmm. Neal, number 41.
This is Octodad, Deadliest Catch. This is a little indie game that I highly recommend. Play with a controller. In the same vein as like QWOP, where you're controlling a person just trying to do normal things, but with awful controls. In this game, you're controlling, with awful controls, a octopus pretending to be a normal person, which makes it way sillier.
I want to say I've heard LGR refer to these as like the derpy physics game.
Yes. Yep. Half the challenge is just figuring out how the control works. You control each of his arms separately with the sticks. You have to hit the triggers to suction cup onto items. They have to move around. And it's great. It's got a silly story. You are just an octopus in a human suit, pretending to be a dad. You've got a family. You've got a wife, human wife. All your kids are human. Don't know how that happened. The only one who's on to you is a sushi chef, and he is your mortal enemy. So yeah, you have to go through some just basic, like going to a grocery store. It's very difficult and very, very fun. This is definitely a game to play with friends around, to laugh at and be like, all right, well, if you think I'm so bad, why don't you try it? And it's a blast. It also has a kick-ass theme tune too. In Nobody Suspects a Thing.
Yeah, it's a game that I think I've had on my Steam wish list for quite a while because it looks very fun and very goofy.
I need to buy it for Switch and bring it to game night.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
It'd be a ton of fun. Yeah. But anyway, Colin, you've got the meaning of life over there, 42.
Ha 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 ha. And wow, a great game to land on that number as well because it's Chrono Trigger.
Hey.
Easily one of the best games ever made. That is not hyperbole.
No, definitely not. This game is incredible.
It is the result of Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi and Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii and Dragon Ball creator the late Akira Toriyama.
I hate that we have to say that now.
Yeah. R.I.P. Akira Toriyama. Gone way too soon. But he left us a great legacy, and that legacy includes Chrono Trigger, and it is a phenomenal game. It's a time-traveling adventure that gets time travel right. And it does so in some very, very unique ways, and also some very good ways. Well, they're all good ways. What am I saying? They're all good. It's Chrono Trigger. But things that you do in one time period reflect in subsequent time periods, which is something that you'd love to see in any time travel story. But the game does so in some really fun ways with certain side quests and stuff, which is really nice. And there's a plethora of different endings that you can get depending on like what you decide to do, how you decide to go against the final boss, and just all sorts of things. It's for a game that came out in 1995, there's just so much in this game that was like revolutionary back then, like the multiple endings. And for any RPG fan, Chrono Trigger is a must play. It's a phenomenal game from start to finish. It's not that long. It's only like 18 to 20 3 hours, depending on how crazy you want to get with side content, but it's such a great adventure. The music done by Yasunori Mitsuda and Nobuo Uematsu together is phenomenal, and you need to play Chrono Trigger. You just have to. It's fantastic.
It is. I'm not even an RPG fan typically, and this is one of my favorite RPGs of all time.
It's very, very good. And we just did an episode on it earlier this year. So if you missed that, you can go back and check that out. But Neal, number 43.
It's definitely a game you should play. Minecraft.
Crafty.
This is a monumental game. Kind of broke everybody's expectations and broke plenty of records too. This game where you play as a guy named Steve walking around a cube world shouldn't be as good as it is, but it's the best way to describe it is Legos, but in video game form. You can build whatever you want. You can play survival games in it. It has mods on the Java end, and Bedrock has something else similar with sort of mods. This game is just a launchpad for tons of content on the internet. Battle Royale gameplay style ultimately started in Minecraft, so you guys over there playing Fortnite, you have Minecraft to thank for that. It's Minecraft. I don't know what else to say. It's huge.
It's a good game.
It's a good game. You can find a lot of enjoyment in this game. If you don't like a certain aspect, try something else. Maybe switch it to peaceful if you don't like fighting the mobs. You just want to build. Try creative.
Yeah.
If you're not into building, try survival. There's maps out there. There's mini games. All sorts of stuff.
Want to be an electrical engineer? You can build relays with redstone circuits and then build entire computer circuits with that.
Yep. If you want to be a little more hands-on with the computer programming, there's command blocks that are literally programmable blocks that have codes and blanking on a word. Commands. It's programming, is what I'm trying to say. Blah. Yeah. But, yeah.
You could play Doom in Minecraft.
Yes, you can. If you have not played Minecraft, give it a shot. Especially if you like survival games and have played any of those. Minecraft is the original and just stripped down the basic. This is a survival game. You can always come back to it. I've been doing a live stream since 2020, playing Minecraft every Monday, and still not sick of it. But with that, Colin, do you have a way to top me with that?
Number 44, I present Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This was my entry point in the franchise, and prior to 3 coming out and just completely blowing me away, this was my favorite in the series. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the story of a young Rex who is a salvager in the world of Alrest, which is this giant world with a sea of clouds, and all of the land masses in the world are actually living creatures called Titans. And Rex is a salvager who spends his time diving down into the cloud sea in search of salvage that he can sell and then make money off of that. He gets dragged into an operation that leads to him awakening a magic sword called the Aegis and introduces him to Pyra, a blade. And Pyra wants him to take her to the land of Elysium, which is this place at the top of the world tree at the center of Alrest. And it's supposed to be this like beautiful, like basically heaven, essentially. It's supposed to be this beautiful, bountiful land. And Pyra wants to get there. And Rex agrees to take her. And all along the way, there are people trying to take Pyra away from Rex because she is the Aegis. And what that means is of all the blades, which are the weapons in the game, but the weapons are also tied to a person. And they're trying to take Pyra because the Aegis is one of the master blades, which has the ability to basically control all of the blades in existence in a way. They compile the data born of all of the blades, and it's a big, complicated thing that kind of gets explained throughout the game that you just gotta play. That you'll get a better explanation of it in the game than me giving it to you. But it's just, it's such a great adventure, and it starts kind of slow, but I like it for that because Alrest is such an interesting world that it takes some time to actually build it out before the adventure really starts to kick into gear. And once it kicks into gear, it's got some of the best villains in any RPG I have played. The combination of Malos and the crew from Torna, especially Jin, are such incredible villains, and the way the game comes around with them is just a masterclass in storytelling. And a lot of people will say that you should play Xenoblade Chronicles 1 first. I disagree. Really, the two games, even though the two games happen in parallel to one another. So you don't really need to play the first one in order to play the second one, and vice versa, because they're connected, but they're still separate in that way. And they don't really get connected until the ends of the games, where you really realize, oh, this is how these are connected. And then once you realize that, it's just freaking mind-blowing how they pull it off. And then to cap it all off with Xenoblade 3 being the thing that brings everything together is just, the three games are one of my favorite stories in all of gaming. Just, it's phenomenally well told. And you should definitely start with 2 over 1, just because the gameplay I feel is a lot better. The battle system in Xenoblade 1 was built with the Wii in mind and hasn't aged the greatest because of that. It's still fine, but I think the way they redid it in Xenoblade 2 is a lot better. Although some people think it's really difficult, I've never really had an issue with it. It is just elemental weaknesses and stuff that's pretty basic. But yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is an amazing game, and you should absolutely play it. Lucas, number 45.
Final 5. And it is sort of the genesis of the 2000s indie game revolution, Cave Story.
Cave Story.
It's a endearing Metroidvania style game. Well, among other NES platformer type games, made by one person across the course of 5 years by themselves, including writing a custom audio format for it. Daisuke Amaya is like sort of a programming legend. Yeah, it sees you taking the role of a robot named Quote, who has lost their memory, and it meets up with a group of cute little rabbit-like creatures called Amigas, and the ensuing hijinks that is going on a floating island in the sky. Something that isn't really revealed to you until very late in the game, like as you're coming up on almost fighting the final boss.
This is a game I need to finish before I die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good game. It's got a lot of fun weapons to it. The fireball that shoots very Super Mario Brothers fireball-like projectiles. My personal favorite, the bubbler, or the bubbline as it is called in the official Nicholas translation, instead of the unofficial Aeon Genesis translation, which was sanctioned by Pixel. The Aeon Genesis translation is more fun because Balrog falling from wherever he came from, shouting huzzahs, so much more entertaining than the more Kool-Aid Man-esque, oh yeah. Yeah, it's a very fun platformer, very Metroidvania-inspired gameplay. Also, very hard at times, with like some very, very difficult boss fights, or strings of boss fights even. Like, notably, the final boss area is really like 3 to 4 bosses, or 3 to 5 bosses, depending on which ending you're playing through. Because when you go to fight the Mad Doctor, you're first interrupted by Misery, and have to fight her, then you fight the doctor, then you fight the zombified core of the island, and then, if you met the requirements, you can go fight Balos, but first you have to fight the heavy press that's kind of guarding the way. And the Bloodstained Sanctuary still hurts my hands to these days.
Yeah, I got like 3 rooms into that. It was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. When we did that one game, Cave Story, I made a zip folder with the save file for Colin and Neal to try out, and they got to experience hell for themselves.
Hell. It was rough.
Uh-huh.
But Cave Story the game is very, very fun, and I'm glad we played it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I found a used copy for Switch at GameStop of all places a few months ago, and it still had like the deluxe edition, like mini CD soundtrack in it and everything.
Mm.
Like it was complete in box from all I could tell, like all the bonus stuff that it came with, used at a GameStop. Cave Story. I was like, what? Yeah, I snap bought that as soon as I saw it on the shelf. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, Cave Story kind of blew up. Like, first it got picked up to become a WiiWare title, and then it made its way onto the Nintendo DSi, as well as an enhanced PC version, and then, or that still, I think, gets new content sometimes, even. And then like a 3D engine remake for the 3DS, and then just it's on everything. And it was like right at the forefront of the huge explosion of indie game titles, alongside like I Want to Be the Guy and Super Meat Boy and
Braid.
Braid.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a legendary platforming game made by one person.
Yeah, it's a great game. And we did an episode on it that you can go back and listen to. But Neal, number 46.
We've got a legendary game here. Portal.
Portal.
This is a game, if you haven't played it, don't let yourself get spoiled and play it now. It's super cheap on Steam. Portal is a fantastic experience. A great example of storytelling in a video game, and an incredibly fun puzzle 3D platformer with one of the coolest mechanics you'll ever see in a video game, which is the aforementioned portal. You can shoot a portal on a wall and another portal on a different wall, and you've connected those planes. And what they do with that mechanic is amazing, and the fact that they add to it with a hilarious robot that's also maybe not so hilarious. It's an amazing game. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it. Same for Portal 2, but I haven't played that, so I'm not putting that.
Yeah. Yeah, Portal was one of the first Xbox 360 games that I ever played on my own personal Xbox.
Yeah.
I borrowed the Orange Box collection from our friend JJ.
Yep.
It's very good.
It is a great game, and a lot of memes. Also, the best ending song ever in a video game. The best song in a video game ever, I'm going to say. I think that's
Definitely
reasonable.
Yeah, I remember seeing a very impressive speedrun of Portal 1 by Transgenic89, I think was their username on SDA, or Demon Straight.
Portal 1 is very broken when it comes to speedrunning.
It's incredibly broken. This run in particular is like, I think 15 minutes long, and ends with Demon Straight singing along poorly to the ending song. And actually started a long-standing tradition of speedrunners doing that for Portal.
There's also videos out there of the Portal developers watching speedruns and just having a great time, while also giving some insight into the speedrunners that they didn't know.
Yeah.
It's a very good video.
Yeah. It's neat seeing developer commentaries on speedruns.
Yes, agreed. Anyway, Colin.
47
7.
is a game that I have probably played through more than any other game I have ever played. Not It's very close. That game is Mass Effect. The original Mass Effect, the first game. A lot of people will tell you nowadays to skip the first Mass Effect and go straight to Mass Effect 2 because the gameplay is better. And I say to that, you're a freaking idiot. Because Mass Effect 1 has the best villain in the entire series, which is Saren. And to deprive yourself of that is really dumb. And also, the gameplay in Mass Effect 1, while it's not as tight as the gameplay in the following two games in the series, it is still pretty good and has aged pretty well, especially with the Legendary Edition bringing the remaster and everything and a lot of bug fixes. And ironically enough, during my most recent playthrough in the TOGP Discord streaming a while back, introduced some different bugs that I never encountered on the Xbox 360 version of the game, but that's besides the point. The story in Mass Effect 1 is incredible, especially the second half, and all of your choices that you make in the first game carry into the second game, carry into the third game. So why would you just skip that? I mean,
Yeah.
going into Mass Effect 2 without having played the first game, it does give you the option to like read like a little visual comic type thing and then make all of the most important choices there. But you don't get like all of the little ones that are just like a random side character that is your biggest fan and he wants to take your picture. And then all of a sudden, like way down the line in Mass Effect 2, he's doing some other random, like crazy freaking thing. And like he references you letting him take your picture in the first game. Like, you know, like there's so many instances of that you just miss out on if you skip the first game because you only then get to make the big choices that are like the big like story moments. You don't get the side stuff. And the side stuff is also really, really good. And also, everyone needs to try out the Mako in Mass Effect 1. That thing is so stupidly unwieldy, but in all the best ways. It is a riot to drive around, and it's super fun to like crash into Geth and use the ragdoll physics in your favor and stuff. Ugh. Why would you skip Mass Effect 1? It's I cringe every time I hear someone say, just start with Mass Effect 2, it's better. It's like, is it though? Because Mass Effect 1 is pretty damn great, and you should play it.
Yeah. I think it was one of the first missions involving the Mako. Didn't we get a Geth stuck on the front end of?
Yes, it was like I was like stuck on the front of the Mako, and I was like dragging it around underneath me. It's like, please let me go. I just want to die. I'm like, no, you're stuck there.
That was hilarious.
It wouldn't let go either. Like I was backing up, pulling forward, like going all crazy all over the place, and it just held on there. It was great.
It was just so cartoon character plastered to the front of a semi.
Yeah. Yeah, it's oh god. Play Mass Effect 1 and then play 2 and 3 because they're all part of one package now in Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and they are phenomenal, and I consider them all to be one game.
It essentially is, with that sort of continuity between them.
Yes.
It's a bit like the old Sierra Online Quest for Glory games, where you could bring your character from like game to game for like 5 different point and clicks.
But also, this is BioWare at their prime. Like, this era of BioWare is peak BioWare, and to just skip over Mass Effect 1 is just, that is blasphemy. Do not skip this game. Play this game, and then play 2 and 3. Anyway.
This was like Dragon Age Origins and Knights of the Old Republic BioWare.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't skip that.
Do not.
Don't skip that.
But Lucas, number 48.
Number 48, I have Super Metroid.
Super.
The best game of all time.
With the worst wall jumping.
Skill issue. Especially because you don't even need to wall jump to complete the game.
Yeah. But you gotta wall jump if you get stuck in the wall jump room.
Well, there's a solution for that.
I fell for 30 minutes.
Okay, Loki. This is really the game that got me into video gaming. Like, it broadened my horizons for games so much. It was also my introduction to the world of tool-assisted speedruns, which I still admire from afar nowadays. But for the longest time, I had as my starting tabs for my web browsers, my YouTube, my Facebook, and castvideos.org because of Super Metroid. Yeah, it's, in my opinion, the best Metroid game. It sees contention from Metroid Prime, but Super Metroid, I think, is still a better game, in my opinion. But I digress. It's a very, open Metroid game. So, you can go just about anywhere without any upgrades. You almost just need the Morph Ball bombs and Morph Ball, and you're set to get just about anywhere in the game. Maybe lower Norfair is a bit much. Need some energy tanks first, but, you can get them. You can fight Ridley as your first boss if you wanted to, because, there's nothing keeping you from, fighting the bosses in a completely reversed order. Matter of fact, I think they've even figured out ways to fight first and then fight the rest of the bosses afterwards. It's also sort of the perennial speedrun game too, because I think Metroid 2 on the Game Boy might have showed you your playtime at the end as well, but this was the first console Metroid game to show you your item collection percentage and how fast you beat the game. And keeping with tradition, it also showed you different endings depending on how fast you completed the game, featuring Samus with varying degrees of clothes. It's because of that timer though, it's just it put me in that sort of speedrunner mindset of play this game, constantly improve that time, continue improving at the skills you're developing. Learn 100%. Learn low percent. There's just so much replay value packed into this one sort of content. A lot of times in people's list of top SNES games or video games of all time, Super Metroid is way up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Right up there with Chrono Trigger.
I'm gonna break your heart, but I like it better than Chrono Trigger. I don't think you're entirely
I like Chrono Trigger more, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, you have a skill issue with wall jumping, so of course you like Chrono Trigger better. It's not that bad. Even the space jump isn't that bad.
But now, the penultimate game, number 49, goes to Neal.
So, I was under the impression that we could only do one game for a franchise, and I had no idea which one to pick. Probably the correct answer is Sonic 2, but that doesn't really give you a full picture of what Sonic games are like. So instead, how about Sonic 06?
Interesting.
It's one of the games of all time.
So, instead of picking a game like Sonic 2 or Mania or maybe one of the adventure titles, one of the games that would get people into the Sonic franchise, you've chosen the one that will likely get them to go, okay, this is no.
So here's the thing.
Okay, elaborate.
Other than Sonic 2, there's not really a good starting place for Sonic games. Because the Sonic Adventure games are not well made. And modern gamers are likely going to be turned away by the adventure games too. And of the 3D games, the best one is Generations, but that's like in a celebration of all of Sonic. So you get all this stuff going on that just you really need to play previous games to get the full Generations experience.
Yeah, it's sort of the Sonic the Hedgehog greatest hits album.
Right, and the same goes for Mania. And Mania is very dense. If you're gonna play a 2D Sonic game, don't start with Mania. I know everybody says, it's the best game since Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and some people are like, this is even better. But don't start with Sonic Mania. There's too much going on in that game.
Yeah, start with Sonic Schoolhouse.
Yeah, so you're not going to start with Sonic Schoolhouse. So how about Sonic 06? Part of this is that one, from here, any other Sonic game you play is going to be better.
Okay, you have a point there.
And two, this is also another game where it's like, this is a game to say, hey, I've played Sonic 06. I know it's a bad game. And
I tried it.
Yeah, you can say you tried it. Yeah.
Where there's a badge of honor.
Yeah, it's a piece of gaming history in that they made a game this bad and somehow it didn't kill the franchise.
Yeah.
Like Sonic Boom was a bad game, but it was in spin-off territory, so like it didn't necessarily kill in the same way you'd expect Sonic 06 to, which was Sonic Adventure 3 in attempt at. And yeah, people will often bring up Sonic 06 and people was like, oh yeah, Sonic 06 is terrible, but not all of them have actually played it and seen it for yourself. So once you've seen it and someone starts defending it, you can be like, hey, I played it. Some of that open world stuff is awful, and the level design can be okay, I guess, in some places, but for the most part...
I remember you mentioning that the multiplayer is entertaining.
Yes. It's an entertaining game, especially with multiplayer, to have someone there next to you going, wow, this is terrible. Yeah, we still need
Really? You like this? This is garbage.
Exactly. Someone there to be the reason. But yeah, we still need to get together and do Sonic multiplayer. I think that would be a good idea.
Well, two of us have a copy of this game and a PlayStation 3 to play it with, so...
Yes.
I wonder who those are.
But, yes. Sonic 06 is a, rock in how to compare, is this game bad? So playing it is not the worst thing to do before you die. But yeah, Colin, what do you have?
Well, my next game. Number 50, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, taking a cue from Neal here, Final Fantasy 2.
What?
No, I'm not doing that. Yes, you should play Final Fantasy 2 because the Pixel Remaster fixed most of what was wrong with that game, and it's a perfectly fine game. That's not game number 50, though. Game number 50 is my favorite game of all time, Final Fantasy X. And I think it's the only game that rivals Mass Effect in the amount of times that I have played through it. Final Fantasy X is an incredible game. From the amazing soundtrack to the completely incredible and emotional storytelling, it's one of my favorite stories ever told in any medium by far. I love the dual protagonists because Titus and Yuna are both technically the protagonists of this story. It is the first game in the franchise featuring a full voice cast, and despite what some people online will try to tell you, it's not bad, especially by 2001 standards. The laughing scene is fine. It is perfect. I would not have that scene any other way. Don't let people on Twitter tell you it's bad, because it's not. But Final Fantasy X tells the story of a guy that gets kind of swept up in this grandiose adventure, swept up 1,000 years into the future, where everything that he knew and loved has been destroyed. But he still kind of holds out hope that he's just kind of been transferred far away, not through time, and there is this malevolent force called Sin that is this giant whale that is hell-bent on destroying just everything completely indiscriminately, and the people of the world kind of believe that that is their punishment for their sin. And there's a lot of themes of the dark side of organized religion and stuff that the game tackles. And it does it in such an elegant way. And then also it gave us something like Blitzball, which is one of the coolest sports that could never possibly feasibly exist of all time. It is basically just underwater rugby, where the entire game is played completely underwater. You are submerged in this giant sphere filled with water, and it's 2 teams of 5 competing against one another. Well, 5 players and a goalie. So I guess 2 teams of 6. And it's underwater rugby, and it's incredibly fun. Especially especially considering that the minigame itself is a little bit broken, just because they threw in some random number generation in there that they really probably shouldn't have, but I guess it makes the game more exciting that way. Just because, there's always going to be the potential for an upset and the underdog can take over and win and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I've spent probably as much time playing Blitzball as I have playing the story mode, because every single time I play through Final Fantasy X, I spend about half my playtime playing Blitzball.
Yeah.
And everyone online is like, oh my god, Waka's ultimate weapon is such a pain to get, because in order to get I think you have to get everyone's ultimate weapon has 2 items that you have to get that powers it up to its ultimate form. And I think, one of those for Waka's, because Waka is the Blitzball player in addition to Titus, but Waka is the guy that he physically attacks with a Blitzball. He just throws a ball at people. It's great. But one of his items to power up his ultimate weapon is locked behind playing hours of Blitzball. And people complain about that. And I'm just like, I unlocked it and I'm like, it's one
of the coolest real fake sports ever.
Yeah. Well, it's like I unlocked that thing and I still I still got probably 10 more hours of Blitzball in me before I start to get bored of this. This is nothing. That and his ultimate limit break are locked behind Blitzball. And I'm just like, I got this. This is nothing for me.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. There are entire YouTube accounts dedicated to traditional sports commentary on Blitzball games. And it's great. It's so good. I love Final Fantasy X so much, and I'm actually very, very due for a replay soon. I'm going to be playing it again this year very soon, because it's been a couple years, and I miss it, and I love it, and it's my favorite game of all time. It took me some time to come to that conclusion, because if you listen back to our first episode, I kind of bounced between 3 different Final Fantasy games as my number 1 slot. But then, since then, I've kind of come to the realization that of those 3 games, the one I revisit most often is 10. And there's no way that I can't not call that my favorite game when I go back to it so often.
Yeah. It was the first main series Final Fantasy that I purchased, and also one of the first PlayStation 2 games that I purchased when I got my PS2.
Yep, it was the first PS2 game that I bought on Christmas Day 2004 when we got our PS2. My parents had got us a stack of games already. I think we had probably 10 or 12 games that they got us with our PS2. And then after we had opened everything and after we had eaten breakfast and everything later that day, we went out and my parents took us to GameStop and let both my brother and I pick one more game. And the game that I chose was Final Fantasy X, and my life was forever changed. It was not my first Final Fantasy game, because I had played 7, 8, and 9 prior to that. But quickly it became my favorite. And yeah, it's absolutely a game that you need to play. A lot of people now, especially as Final Fantasy is starting to grow in popularity and stuff, a lot of people will ask, like, what game should I start with? Like, should I start with should I start with 7 Remake, or should I start with Final Fantasy 16, or should I start with any other title? I still think Final Fantasy 10 is the best place to start. It is still modern enough, even though it's almost 25 years old now. It's just because of the voice acting and everything. It's still modern enough, but it still holds on to enough of like the older traditional style. So it's like this perfect middle ground between classic and modern Final Fantasy, where if you want something more action-based after playing 10, then you can go forward in the timeline, or if you like the turn-based aspect and want to get more into that, you can go backward. So it's the perfect starting point, and it's the best. It's so good. So that was 50 games. But
Yeah.
because we all kind of had an even number of games, and 50 doesn't divide by 3, even when we take into account our, hey, listeners, we have, surprise, one more game. Lucas, what's the last game?
Well, the good news is I can keep this one short because we just last episode talked about it. It's Metroid Prime.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Our surprise 51st game is episode 49 of That One Gaming Podcast.
It really is.
Number 51 is number 49.
Yeah. Because that's how numbers work, Neal.
Yep. Yeah, we hit the number ceiling, so that means we got to count backwards now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, we got, if you want to know our full thoughts on Metroid Prime, we did just do an episode on it, as mentioned. So there we go. 50 games plus 1 that you should try before you die. We got there. That was an episode, but now we have one more segment to get through. Our weekly link to the past. And we had to delay this episode by a week because technical issues.
Yeah.
So this week's link to the past is actually going to be on the day that this episode does go live, which is the 23rd of April, and releasing 20 years ago on that date in Japan. Mega Man 03.
It's my absolute favorite of the Mega Man Zero series. And when we had to make room for the Hey Listeners games for this episode, that was one of the games that I had on my list that I cut. So this is game number 52, actually.
Haha! 52 games you should try before you die.
Yeah. I cannot
It
sing
just
the
doesn't
praises
ring
of
as
that
well
game
as 50 games, so.
It doesn't.
And also, this is episode 50, so.
It is.
Yeah.
See, we overachieved.
Yep.
We went above and beyond.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Can't
Play
wait
video
for
games.
episode 100.
Ha 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 ha.
Yeah. Mega Man 03, after playing it just once, like, usurped Mega Man 02 as my favorite game in the series. Go pick up Mega Man Zero ZX Collection and play it.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. The Zero games are really good, even though I've only played like half of the first one.
Yep.
If that. Probably not. But yeah. Happy birthday, Mega Man 03. Let's get out of here. But first, a special thank you to everyone that has listened to us for these past 2 years through 50 episodes. Lucas, where can they find you outside the podcast?
Well, I have a link tree. It's linktr.ee/karn_evil_999. Includes links to my Twitter, under the same user handle, the Karn_evil_999. Also has links to my YouTube channel where I upload long plays of the games we feature on That One Game series of episodes. Add me on Steam if you like to get pinged by Steam notifications. at random. And then, of course, links to join the podcast Discord and listen to past episodes of the podcast, such as episode 49, Metroid Prime, because it's one of the games you should play before you die. But anyways, it's linktr.ee/Karn_evil_999.
All right. And where can we find you, Neal?
You can find me at my link tree, linktr.ee/VMK89. I got links to one of my game picks for one that you should play before you die, which is Minecraft Monday. Come watch us play Minecraft, this great game. And right now we're starting a new map. It's going pretty well so far, and we're having a good time. So come join the fun, hop in chat, we'll say hello. Meanwhile, I got links to the podcast Discord, and my Twitter. Follow me there too. Colin, why don't you take over with that?
You can find me on Twitter at Delicious Morsel, and you can also find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Delicious Morsels and youtube.com/@Delicious Morsels Music. And also, if you like music, then you can find me on Spotify or Apple Music or one of any of the other music streaming platforms out there, but I got links to those two down below. And as always, if you liked what you heard here today, please be sure to hit the subscribe button where that's an option. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts because I hear they like that stuff. Hit the like button if that's a thing, and feel free to share this episode with a friend. We are going to be back next week, actually, with another episode. But until then, have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember...
Play for the cows.
Stay for 50 more episodes.